Alrighty, welcome back everybody to our latest live stream. Hope everybody's having a good evening so far. We do have a lot to talk about in terms of Tropical Storm Idalia. This is a system that is going to probably strengthen very quickly over the next few days as it moves toward Florida. There will be major impacts out of this. It's almost undoubtable that we'll be looking at some storm surge, flooding, high winds along the coastline. I'm going to give you the latest breakdown on who's going to see those impacts, how bad will they actually be, and what we're looking at right now with Idalia, because this system does have the potential become a strong category 1, 2, or even maybe a category 3 hurricane before it makes landfall. And I'll explain why in this live stream and give you an in-depth dive into everything. We'll also be answering questions throughout the live stream, so if you have any, save them to about 30 minutes into the live stream. We'll be discussing those then. Before we get too far into it, this live stream today is brought to you by Radar Omega. That'll be the app that we're using for most of the stream today. You can download it with the top link in the description below. It's on the top link or in the pinned link in the chat. It's a fantastic app. Again, it's on iOS and Android. You can download those links. Again, top link in the description below. All right, let's first begin with the tropical systems that we do have across the Atlantic Ocean. We have two in particular. We have category 2 Hurricane Franklin. This is not going to impact the United States, but I just want to kind of get it off our chest to begin this. This is north of Cuba, east of Florida, will not be posing any major impacts, at least to the United States. There will be an increased wave height of maybe across the East Coast over the next couple days and maybe some rip currents, but nothing too far beyond that. This is a system that actually has a very decent core here. It's very organized. You actually might notice a little bit of that eye showing over the last few hours on the satellite imagery. That's located again about 100 miles north of Cuba. It's moving off to the north, but notice by tomorrow this is forecasted to become our first major hurricane of the year. This will be going off to the north. It'll actually be going toward Bermuda, so Bermuda will see the brunt of some of these impacts out of this system, bring high winds, maybe some flooding as well, storm surge for sure. Category 4 hurricane most likely by going into Tuesday, so that'll definitely be something to watch for on Tuesday for its category 4 hurricane as well of the year, and then eventually that'll go off to the north and east pretty quickly, weakening as it goes out to sea. But obviously it will be impacting Bermuda, and we'll be keeping a close eye on this system. But again, no impacts, at least in terms of moderate or major impacts, are expected to the United States out of that one. Now let's talk more about tropical storm. I've already forgot the name. Holy cow. This is tropical storm, I can't pronounce it. Idalia, there we go. This is going off to the north. I keep thinking of Ida whenever I think of this because they're just so similar, but this is Tropical Storm Idalia. This is moving off to the north right now, but it's moving very slowly. Notice right now this is located in the northern Caribbean Sea, and again, this satellite imagery is played throughout the day today, so this began earlier today, and this is like 4 o'clock. The timestamp's at the top of your screen, but obviously we're starting to lose that satellite imagery because basically we don't have any sun, so we can't see the satellite anymore. We can see the infrared imagery. It's a little bit different, and I'll show you that in a second. But as of right now, this is moving off to the north. Again, this will be going off toward really western Cuba over the next 24 to 48 hours. But as of right now, it is a tropical storm. Sustained winds have actually increased over the last few hours. It went from 40 miles per hour. It's now up to 45 mile per hour winds. So it is starting to strengthen slowly but surely, and it will likely start to intensify more as it goes into the Caribbean Sea. But notice the track of this. It's a very weird track. This was actually going off to the north and west. It also did like a little U-turn and is now going back out to the east. So it's been in a kind of a weird stage here where it's been pretty stationary, but there is a lot of convection with this right now, and that's a big concern because this will intensify very quickly, especially with how much convection we have right now in parts of the northern Caribbean Sea. It's the circularization here back over just east of the Yucatan. You'll notice it's kind of in here. It's not very organized right now, but that is where our main focus is in terms of where the eye is, but it's very hard to see. You'll see it a little bit better here in just a second once we get back to the beginning of this scan, so around 10:50. So here's this morning. Again, you might be able to see it a little bit better then. There was a little bit more wind shear this morning, so that was kind of cutting off some of those cumulus clouds that build up very tall, but we're now not really seeing as much wind shear anymore. These storms that are embedded in this current tropical storm are really starting to ramp up pretty quickly. But as of right now, it's moving currently east-northeast at about maybe 3 to 4 miles per hour. It's not moving very fast. It's going to start to go off to the north, though, overnight tonight, and this will start to move into the southeastern Gulf of Mexico. And once we go into tomorrow, the National Hurricane Center does think this will become a Category 1 hurricane, either late tomorrow night or going into the overnight hours. That'll be kind of when we're watching, so late Monday night or Tuesday morning. I personally think this will become a Category 1 sometime late tomorrow. I don't think it'll happen during the overnight hours. I do think this will really intensify very quickly. It's a very favorable environment in the Gulf of Mexico right now. We have very warm ocean waters, and it's really a cause for concern here. Really warm ocean waters. Currently, it's 30 to 31 degrees Celsius in parts of the eastern Gulf of Mexico, so that's a big concern there. And it's overall, there's not a whole lot of wind shear. We don't have Saharan dust anymore really playing a factor into these systems. So overall, this will have a very good chance of development here in the Gulf of Mexico. And then as it moves off to the north, going into Tuesday afternoon at 2 o'clock, the National Hurricane Center does think this will become a stronger Category 1 hurricane with sustained winds around 85 miles per hour. Look at those wind gusts, 105 miles per hour near the eye of this storm. Once we go into late Tuesday night into Wednesday morning, this will start to intensify into a Category 2 hurricane. This is where things could get very, very hairy, though, and very dicey. This could very well become a Category 3 hurricane just due to the fact there could be rapid intensification with this system, but there is some uncertainty regarding that. That's why the National Hurricane Center, as of right now, is leaving this more to a middle ground Category 2 hurricane. And a Category 2 hurricane is from 96 miles per hour to 110. So it's kind of in the middle, kind of the middle lower end of that. It's not really a big range. But as of right now, the maximum wind speed being forecasted is at 100 miles per hour. But again, it very well could be higher than that. I personally think if it's able to go under that rapid intensification mode, it very well could really intensify quickly and become a Category 3 hurricane upon landfall. Maybe even stronger than that. It's not out of the question. Again, this is taking a very similar track to what Ian did last year. Ian moved right through Cuba, though, and it went up through Cape Coral. It was a little bit different. It was a little bit slower, but it has similar characteristics, and it's going through a very similar environment at a very similar part of the year with really warm ocean waters, very minimal wind shear, and there's no Saharan dust. Again, Saharan dust really not in play out of this system. This will continue to move off to the north, though, going toward Florida, and it'll make landfall anywhere in between this cone. Don't get too caught up on where the center of this cone is. Right here, just west of Gainesville, Florida. That is where the best chance for this to make landfall is, but that does not mean it's going to make landfall there. It could make any landfall anywhere in between basically Panama City back through Tampa. It's a huge range, and computer models are still moving all over the place. They haven't been really consistent. They've been fairly consistent for the last like 24 hours or so in this area here, and maybe a little bit further to the east. It's had a very slight east movement over the last couple of hours. It's been kind of showing different models been showing different things, but there has been a bit of an easterly shift over the last 12 hours or so with a lot of the computer models, and it's definitely gonna be something to watch out for because again, it could make landfall anywhere in this area. Another critical thing with the cone of uncertainty is that we can see impacts outside of the cone. Storm surge is possible all the way down into the Florida Keys, believe it or not. It's going to be possible all the way down that direction, down into parts of southwest Florida, and as well as back near Panama City. So it's a very large area that we're looking at here that has a chance for storm surge. So obviously make sure you're staying very weather aware here. There's a lot of things to watch out for, and even if you're not in this cone of uncertainty, that does not mean you're not going to see impacts, because you likely will, especially if you're within a reasonable range here of the cone. You'll probably at least see some rainfall out of this, potentially some flash flooding in some areas. Rainfall totals could get up as high as 10 inches, so it's definitely gonna be something to watch out for here over the next few days in terms of the forecast models. Notice as we go into Wednesday afternoon, this is going to be inland over Georgia near Brunswick, but again, cone of uncertainty is very large. The eye of the storm could be up here and it could be over here. There's two big differences here. So if you're along the East Coast, multiple things could happen. If you're watching for the inland system, this will be much weaker. So if this hurricane goes inland, and it'll be a tropical storm by this point, but if it's a tropical storm by this point and it's more inland, it'll be much weaker. We'll be talking about mostly rain, maybe some minor storm surge along the immediate coastline for those near Charleston, Savannah, maybe back through Southport and Wilmington, back in North Carolina. So that'll be what we're watching there. But if it's further to the south, back near like Jacksonville or Daytona Beach, near Palm Coast, in south of Brunswick, and if it's out to sea, this will cause more impacts in terms of high winds and as well as flooding. Now, if it rides right along the coastline, that is pretty much worst case scenario when it comes to the system, because it'll be basically causing all impacts right along the East Coast. But notice, as of right now, the National Hurricane Center is keeping this at a tropical storm level over the next, or really at least for right now, for those between Wednesday and until Friday. So right now, it's not forecasted to redevelop into a Category 1 hurricane. But again, remember with what we saw with Hurricane Ian last year. I'm not saying they're the same system, and I'm not saying they're going to cause the same exact impacts, but they are quite similar in terms of their track right now. This one's obviously a bit further off to the north and west, but even if it rode along the coastline here, there's a chance it could strengthen back to a Category 1 hurricane, similar to what Ian did last year. So it's always in the potential here. Obviously, 60-mile-per-hour winds on a tropical storm, that's not really a weak tropical storm. That's still a middle ground tropical storm. So there's definitely some room there for this to either be stronger or weaker, but there's a lot of uncertainty, again, where this goes, even beyond really the next couple days, because this, again, has a pretty large cone of uncertainty, and we don't really know where this is going to make landfall yet. But the best chance of it making landfall will be in this red zone. Even a little bit outside of this, I wouldn't rule out, but I'm saying it's pretty low chance anywhere outside of that red cone of uncertainty right now. One other thing I want to point out before I go through the forecast, giving you an idea of what's going to actually happen. This is the infrared imagery, and this is what we can see at nighttime, and this is super critical. I mean, we're talking about the convection with this current ongoing tropical storm Idalia right now in the northern and central Caribbean Sea. Notice all the blue. That blue is going to represent the thunderstorms. That's the very cold cloud tops in the upper atmosphere, and this is what we're looking at, a massive explosion over the last couple hours in terms of thunderstorm activity. That is not a good sign. That's usually at least indicating some level of intensification with a tropical storm. So we are watching this very closely. When you look at Franklin, for example, just going to kind of use this as an example, because obviously Idalia actually has a chance to look similar to what Franklin looks like. But you'll notice Franklin has a lot of convection in the center of it. Notice this is the eye right here. We have convection all around it. That's obviously a much more organized system. This is not organized whatsoever, but there is a ton of convection, and at least over the last few hours, there's been a big explosion in terms of thunderstorm activity in the northern Caribbean Sea. And again, you might be wondering, why do I care? Well, this is the beginning of intensification. We see this a lot with tropical storms and even hurricanes sometimes when they're developing. We see a lot of this blow up in convection. Now, let me go back to the last few frames here on Radar Omega, so the 21 frames. Just going to do the last few hours. This is from 5 o'clock this afternoon up until now. And again, notice the blue area there. That's all exploding around the eye of where this storm is right now. And it's obviously getting pretty intense over there in terms of the thunderstorm activity. So that's just one sign that we're seeing of intensification. But don't forget, the hurricane hunters will be out there currently investigating the storm. We'll have more details at 11 o'clock tonight Eastern time on if this is strengthened at all in terms of the wind speeds, and as well as the direction of this storm and all that sort of stuff. So we'll obviously be watching for that at 11 o'clock tonight, but that'll definitely be something to watch for. All right, let's go over to some of the forecast graphics. Let's kind of break down what we're expecting for the next several days in terms of this system. And we're going to go back over to here. So this is right now what we're looking at in terms of satellite imagery. Again, I've already kind of showed you this, but let's do some of the forecast graphics and show you what's going to happen. And we're going to begin with the European model in terms of the track of this storm. What will it make in terms of impacts to the coastline, and how strong could this get, and what are the computer models saying? Are we going to be looking at a category 1 or 2 hurricane upon landfall? Could this get to a major hurricane? Again, we'll break that all down for you here. So beginning with tomorrow, notice how this system is moving into the southeast southeast Gulf of Mexico, and this is going to be late tomorrow night. So it's around 996 millibars. That's what, as of right now, the European model is indicating, which, by the way, that's around a category 1 hurricane usually in terms of pressure. So we'll have to watch this very closely. Again, I do think this will get to a category 1 hurricane sometime tomorrow evening, probably around 11 o'clock, maybe even the 8 o'clock update. Once we go into the overnight into Tuesday morning, notice this storm gets very close to Florida. We're not going to see major impacts Tuesday, most likely. There will be some impacts, at least during the morning hours. There will be some minor impacts. The impacts will really start to increase as we go through the afternoon of Tuesday into the evening hours, and the worst of the impacts will be Wednesday morning. But notice some outer bands will start to impact the west coast of Florida. There will be an increased tornado risk across the west coast, primarily around Tampa, and then back into parts of the Panhandle, as well as back down through Cape Coral. There will be a slightly increased tornado risk. Some of these outer bands will pose a threat for a tornado or two. Wouldn't rule out a tornado threat in central Florida. It's not out of the question, maybe in the East Coast, but overall, again, the threat can be a little bit lower the further east you go. This is by about 3 o'clock on Tuesday. Notice how intense this storm starts to get. And one thing that this computer model, and really all of the computer models are not really accounting for, is how warm the ocean waters are, which is one big thing. They are accounting for it to a degree. But another thing, the wind shear is not very strong, and we also have the supermoon. And you might not have heard about this, but on August 30th, that is on Wednesday, we have a supermoon in the United States and across the entire world, but we will have a supermoon. That increases the tides here, especially across parts of Florida. And that is not going to be good. That's going to basically increase the tides. Whenever we have a full moon or a supermoon, this is a supermoon, but it's a full moon. A full moon will start to increase those tides more drastically, and that's not good for a hurricane making landfall the day of that happening. That'll definitely not be good in terms of storm surge, hence why the storm surge forecast is already at a pretty high level right now. Once we go into late Tuesday night and a Wednesday morning, notice again 983 millibars. Again, I would not be surprised if this intensifies further. It's going to be in the Gulf of Mexico for approximately 24 to 48 hours, and during that time frame, there could be some rapid intensification. This will make landfall in Florida probably either during the overnight hours Tuesday night or into Wednesday morning. The European model has sped this up just a little bit. This is around 3 to 4 in the morning on Wednesday. That's when it's currently estimated to make landfall in the European model, but other computer models are showing that it might make landfall closer to like 9 to 10 in the morning on Wednesday. This is by 6 a.m. on the European model. Again, notice it'll go over into parts of northern Florida. But again, this could go anywhere. It could very well go up this direction. It could go toward Tampa. Again, that's where the eye of the storm has a chance of going. And eventually going through the daytime, this moves quickly off to the north and east. And since this is quicker than Ian was much slower. This should not produce nearly as much rainfall. So we shouldn't be talking about extreme flooding absolutely everywhere. There will be flooding, but it will not be to the degree of what Ian had, with Ian bringing, like Daytona Beach, for example, last year. They saw 22 inches of rain. Orlando was near 20 inches of rain. So there was a lot of rain last year. here. I don't see that happening this time around. I don't think the rainfall totals will be nearly as high. And then when we're talking about the NAM model, this is another short-term computer model run, but this you'll notice, again, this is showing a little bit later of a landfall with pretty similar impacts. This would be really late. This would be around 9 a.m. on Wednesday, the landfall estimate. So if it goes a little bit further to the north, the landfall will be a little bit later. If it goes further to the east, it'll be a little bit earlier. So that's kind of the difference there between the NAM and as well as the HRR model. All right, let's go through the wind gusts here, and this is the wind gusts on the European model, and this is just another estimate on terms of how high the winds could be. Again, this is subject to change. This could be well higher. It could be also lower in some areas. This is 2 a.m. on Wednesday. Here's your timestamp right up here, so just kind of follow along with that timestamp. Notice the highest of the winds right off the coast, around 90 to 95 miles per hour in terms of the wind gusts. Again, they could be a bit higher than that. They might be a bit lower. Once we go toward 8 in the morning, this is making landfall, at least according to the European model. Notice even near Gainesville, 65 to 70 mile per hour winds on the immediate coastline could be as high as 80 to 90 miles per hour. But again, this could make landfall anywhere in this area. So this core here could go up here. It could go over here. It also could go where it's currently forecasted to go. It's still a big range. So just keep that in mind. I'm trying to remind you that as much as possible because, again, this is not set in stone in terms of where the current area will make landfall and going into Wednesday morning. And once we go into late Wednesday, the winds do start to die down a bit. But notice even Jacksonville, Daytona Beach, Orlando, they're going to start to see wind gusts still around 40 to 50 miles per hour on Wednesday. One other thing I want to point out, schools could be canceled on Tuesday and Wednesday for some areas, especially along the coastline of Florida, on the west coast, and as well as back through even parts of the Panhandle near Panama City. It is possible. NAM model showing similar stuff. Again, high winds really near the core wherever this makes landfall. And notice across all of Florida, we are still watching for wind gusts even as far south as Miami. Could be upwards of 30 to 40 mile per hour winds. So there's definitely going to be that chance for even some wind gusts there and maybe some isolated power outages to go along with it. Now, in terms of the rainfall totals, I'll show you other computer models in the Radar Omega in a second, but this is kind of a look at the European model. Notice the highest rainfall totals will be really probably wherever the center of the storm does make landfall, so 4 to 8 inches of rain is a reasonable estimate for the maximum rainfall totals. Remember with Ian dropped upwards of 2 feet of rain. I don't see that happening with this. It's not going to be that slow. This will be a pretty quick moving system through Florida, which is obviously going to still be a concern for storm surge and as well as high winds, but this is going to be a bit quicker than Ian, luckily, because Ian was sitting for a while and just dumping tons of rain over Florida. This will be a pretty quick moving system, so the highest rainfall totals right now are estimated to be probably somewhere between 4 to 8 inches. Most of the East Coast will be between none to up to an inch of rain. Most people should see rain, but it'll be between about half an inch to an inch and a half. And back over on the West Coast, Cape Coral, Sarasota, and Tampa, it'll be somewhere between 2 to 4 inches for the most part. But again, it's going to be contingent again on where this makes landfall. All right, let's go into the National Hurricane Center graphics in terms of what to expect for storm surge, rainfall totals, and all that sort of stuff. So we're going to begin with the storm surge. And the storm surge is definitely going to be a big concern. Again, this is happening on a full moon night. That is obviously very concerning. Full moon is going to be on Wednesday. That's the supermoon. And supermoon only happens, I believe, once every decade or so. It's very rare. The supermoon doesn't really compare too much to the full moon in terms of the tides. It will not change it that drastically. But the full moon is obviously going to increase tides, and the highest tides will be even higher than they usually are. So notice as we go into really late Tuesday into Wednesday, that is when we're watching for storm surge. And notice the main area right now in terms of the peak of storm surge will be between the Osceola River back through a place I really cannot pronounce, but that's north of Tampa and the Tampa Bay area, between 7 to 11 feet of storm surge. That is very concerning for the immediate coastline. Evacuations will be mandatory for the most part right on that coastline. If you're like only a foot or two above sea level, you're definitely going to have to evacuate there. It will be way too dangerous as long as this makes landfall up in this area. But again, it could change, so stay tuned. Again, things might change here. It's still subject to change, all this info, but it's basically the preliminary what we're going to be looking at out of this. Back through parts of the northern Panhandle, or back through the Panhandle, back near areas like Panama City, for example, I'm not expecting nearly as much storm surge. Again, remember with Ian, I keep comparing to Ian, but they're very similar systems. They're coming from the same area, but Ian made landfall over here near the Charlotte Harbor. One thing to note is that the highest storm surge was right in here. Tampa Bay barely saw any storm surge, and even further up the coastline, there was barely any storm surge, even though the forecasted storm surge was higher. But once it made landfall near Cape Coral, the storm surge was really rampant over here. And that's because the winds are coming out of the south. And once this makes landfall up here, we're gonna have southerly winds here. And let me do a different line here. So let's just make sure, let's go ahead and say this is the tropical storm or hurricane by this point. And let's go and draw out some lines. So this is like the wind speeds, for example. Again, it's all going to be counterclockwise. So this will be the wind speeds. And if we have winds coming out of the north back up into parts of the panhandle, the storm surge will not be nearly as significant. It still will be there. There will be at least a few feet of storm surge, but it will not be nearly as significant. It'll all be kind of rotating around. So the storm surge will be way more rampant here across the right side of where this hurricane is, and as well as on the north side of where this system ends up making landfall. In terms of rainfall totals, notice around Tampa Bay and also back near Tallahassee, that's really the main concern in terms of the highest rainfall totals. Upwards of 4 to 6 inches of rain will be possible. Higher amounts are possible. Again, this is all subject to change. I don't think the rainfall will be this significant through this area. I do think this will shift further to the east in terms of where that heaviest rainfall will be. But again, things are going to change over the next few days. We'll keep you posted with the latest. I want to compare to you over the last 6 hours with the different computer model runs from the 12Z to the 18Z, which is about 6 a.m. to the 12 p.m. computer models today. We should have the 8 or the 00Z, which is 6 p.m. here pretty soon. But this is basically a look at the different intensity of what this system could become. Now notice at 6 o'clock this morning, computer models were really just saying, hey, it's going to become maybe a tropical storm, maybe a low-end hurricane, category 1, somewhere in that range. One computer model shot it up to a category 2. Over the last 6 hours, this has changed pretty substantially. More computer models are now indicating this will become most likely a category 2 hurricane. Some are still, the majority are still saying category 1. There are some that are up to a category 2, a couple on the border there of a category 3, and then there's really only a couple down in the tropical storm stage. So really right now, it does have a lot more indications that we're going to be looking at something that's more intense. And here's actually the latest. This just came in. So this is the 00Z model run. So that's 6 p.m. tonight. So again, these are in 6-hour intervals. Notice that it's showing anywhere between a category 1, a strong category 1, 3, even a medium to a high-end category 2 hurricane with these latest computer model runs. So just keep that in mind. Again, we're going to be really looking at that very closely here over the next several days. Let's go. Let me pull up a different graphic here before I go ahead and go back to Radar Omega. Let me show you this. I'm going to show you the spaghetti models. I don't know why I didn't pull it up on here, so let me do that real quick. All right, here's the spaghetti models. I thought I pulled them up, but apparently not. Here are the spaghetti models. Again, this is just showing a bunch of computer models on one graphic. And notice where the current tropical storm Idalia is. It's going to be well back down into parts of the northern Caribbean Sea. But most computer models are really aligned right now in terms of where this will make landfall. And it's anywhere between Tampa Bay and back through parts of the Panhandle east of Panama City. That's the current area that we're looking at for where this could make landfall. Again, it could make landfall further south. It could still make landfall further north. But the overall shift over the last 24 to 48 hours has been that this will make landfall a bit further to the east. And this has really become more unison. About 24 to 48 hours ago, it was making more landfall here. So on the very left of your screen, this was kind of the area that we're looking at for a landfall. But notice how the computer models have shifted this further to the east by about 50 miles. It's a pretty big shift, by the way. And this is all the way back north of Tampa Bay, back through parts of, again, the Panhandle. That's the area that we'll be watching for just west of Gainesville, Florida. That is where the computer models are becoming more unison in terms of where this will make landfall. And this is about 48 to 72 hours away, guys. This is not that far away. We're within 2.5 days of this making landfall. It's actually very close in comparison to what you might think. So I want to make sure you know to take the proper precautions before this makes landfall, because this very well, again, could be a Category 2 hurricane upon landfall, or even maybe a Category 3. It's entirely possible. Again, rapid intensification is going to be possible out of this system as it moves into Florida. Other things that you're going to want to keep in mind is that schools could be canceled on Tuesday and Wednesday in certain areas. Again, not every school will be canceled. It really just depends on where you are in terms of where you are in Florida, but if you're right along the coastline on the west coast, like north of Tampa, for example, right on the coastline, I almost guarantee you, you're probably going to have schools canceled if you're right on the coastline there. But a bit more inland, it's a bit more to be determined. This, again, could go into rapid intensification in the Gulf of Mexico with how warm the ocean waters are, and the wind shear will be pretty weak. That will allow for the potential, again, it's a potential for rapid intensification. What that means is we saw this with Ian last year a couple times. With Ian, it went from like a Category 1 to a Category 3 to a Category 4 and even almost a Category 5 very quickly over a very short amount of time. This is entirely possible with this system as it moves into the Gulf of Mexico, and where that could happen would be really in between right in here. So basically the southeast Gulf of Mexico back through the northeast parts of the Gulf of Mexico, that is where rapid intensification could occur. And again, it's not set in stone that that'll definitely happen, but it is possible. We are in the peak of hurricane season. I cannot stress that enough. So it's definitely be something to watch out for very closely. We have a tornado warning, I believe, in Idaho. I just want to, yeah, we have a tornado warning in Idaho real quick. I'm just going to show you guys this real quick, and we'll go back to the hurricane. Tornado warning back over in parts of Idaho. This is a very random one. South of the American Falls area. Seek shelter away from windows lowest floor possible. This is radar indicated rotation near Rockland. want to real quickly look at this. Our reports of funnel clouds in the area, so that's what that is. Looks like it's probably going to be back west of Rockland. So if you're in Rockland, seek shelter immediately away from windows, lowest floor possible. Wow, that really came out of nowhere. That was really weird. But that's west of Rockland in that area. Again, seek shelter. There's been reports of funnel clouds, so rotations on the very western side of that tornado warning. All right, I don't know what I was saying anymore. I kind of lost track because of that tornado warning. That was a really out of nowhere tornado warning. All right, let's go back to this real quick, and let me go to here. Let me just make sure I got all the stuff that I wanted to say. I have a couple of notes here. Again, reminder, I said this before, but this is in a very similar spot as Ian, so it's not really that far off from where Ian was. Ian was further off to the east. Let me just take off the satellite real quick. Let's go to this. But this is where Ian was last year. It was right just south of Cuba. That's where it was, and it went this direction. It's not in the same spot, but there are pretty similar instances here where they are in comparison to where this system is. And guys, where the system, these tropical storms are, wherever they start to develop back in like the Northern Caribbean Sea, it's very concerning because when we're in the Northern Caribbean Sea, it's really in a prime position to start intensifying as it goes in the Gulf of Mexico. And there's not a whole lot of wind shear, not a whole lot of Saharan dust, and there's a lot of warm ocean waters, which, again, we have a surplus of warm ocean waters. It's really in a pretty prime position to go up to the north and really start to intensify. So we'll have to watch this very closely. Ian, again, was in a pretty similar situation, but it was much slower, so it had more time to develop, and therefore it was able to develop much quicker, and it became a Category 4 hurricane upon landfall. So obviously that's going to be something to kind of keep in mind there. But again, very concerning storm right now. I know it doesn't look a whole lot like anything right now, but obviously over the last few scans here on the infrared imagery, you'll notice there has been a huge blow up in shower and storm activity in the center of this, which usually indicates some intensification. And hurricane hunters are going into this. There will be another update at 11 p.m. tonight Eastern time in terms of the track, if there's any changes to that, whether they'll increase or decrease the wind probabilities. Because as of right now, the National Hurricane Center upon landfall has this forecasted to get to a Category 2 hurricane with sustained winds of 100 miles per hour. Again, it's definitely possible it gets stronger. I'm not going against the National Hurricane Center's forecast by any means. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it's possible that it gets stronger than that. So you want to make sure you're prepared as if this were to make landfall as like a Category 3 hurricane. Be prepared for storm surge. Have evacuation plans in place if you're on the immediate coastline and even a little bit inland if you're anywhere within about 10 to 15 feet of sea level. You want to make sure you're monitoring that very closely this entire storm. And you also want to make sure you're prepared for flooding rains as well as high winds because, again, a lot of stuff will be happening here over the next several days. All right, let me take a breather real quick. I'm going to have a drink of water. I'll be answering questions, going over some other stuff as well. Wind probabilities, I'll be going over that here in a few minutes as well. Because there's a lot to talk about in terms of wind probabilities. I've not shown that, but... Counterclockwise? Did I say clockwise? I meant to say counterclockwise if I said clockwise on the low pressure system. Yeah, so whenever we have a tropical storm or hurricane, and this is for any low pressure system, but a hurricane is a low pressure system that's very intense over water. That's the simplest way to put it. These are always going to have counterclockwise rotations. That's just how it goes. High pressure systems are clockwise, so that's just kind of something I want to throw out there. I might have mistakenly said clockwise earlier. I have no clue. So if I were to give a probability on what category this will be upon landfall, I know some people are wondering, like, what will this actually be upon landfall? So once this makes immediate landfall, the probability of this being a Category 1 hurricane or greater, so I'm talking about, like, basically, let's just go ahead and say Cat 1 or greater. So Cat 1 or greater, it's at least an 80% chance. I mean, a tropical storm is definitely possible. If this system somehow struggles in the Gulf of Mexico, which I don't really foresee, a Category 1 hurricane is at least an 80% chance of happening. Category 2 hurricane, I would say it's about a 60% chance, at least in my opinion. Again, this is not the National Hurricane Center. This is just my opinion here. Category 3 hurricane, right now I'm putting it at a 25% chance. It definitely could increase or decrease. Category 4 would be probably a 10%. Category 5 is well under 5% in my opinion. I don't think this will get to that stage. Rapid intensification with how fast this is moving, it's unlikely that it will get that far up. I really think Category 3 will probably be the maximum that this gets to upon landfall, which will be between about 111 miles per hour up to about 130 mile per hour wind speeds. That's definitely possible upon landfall, but again, stay tuned. Things could change. Again, it might get there. It's not 100% in the set in stone right now that will get up to 110 mile per hour, or past 110 mile per hour winds. So, but I do have a strong feeling that this gets to a Category 3 hurricane. I don't think it'll get to a Category 4, but I personally have a strong feeling this gets to a Category 3 upon landfall. The swells are really primed for this, and it's really, I mean, again, this is the Gulf of Mexico. We are in late August. It's very primed for being a strong hurricane in the Gulf of Mexico. I'm not trying to panic you by any means. Again, I'm very honest here. I'm just saying my gut feeling is that this will become a Category 3 hurricane before it makes landfall. That's just my gut feeling. Maybe my gut's wrong. I don't know, but it has been right in the past, so that's just my take on it. We'll see. I don't think there's enough room for this to become a Category 4. Again, it's going through open ocean waters, but it's only going to be in the Gulf of Mexico for maybe 36 hours. It's not going to be there forever, so. There's really not a whole lot of indicators that this will become a Category 4. In my opinion, there's just not enough time. Ian was in the Gulf, I don't know for how many days, somebody could correct me, but I think it was at least in the Gulf for like 2 or 3 days. It was there for at least 2 days, I'm pretty sure. And it was very slow moving, and it really rapidly intensified, obviously, in the Gulf. It went through Cuba. I believe it was Category 1 over Cuba, so actually, I do have a track, let me check. So it was actually Category 3 over Cuba, so it intensified well beforehand, and then it went through Tampa. I have a path I can probably show you. Let me find it. But yeah, went through Cuba as a Category 3, so it was obviously much stronger ahead of time. This could very well undergo rapid intensification and become, again, a major hurricane. Trying to see if I can find a track here. Yeah, basically, I'll label it. Let me take off the satellite again real quick. But this is basically what we're looking at here. So Ian was a Category 3 right about here. Went through the Havana area in western Cuba. Continued as a Category 3. It became a Category 4 right about here or so. And then it made landfall in Cape Coral as a Category 4 hurricane. And then it started to weaken over Florida. So it really intensified right in between, basically in the northern Caribbean Sea. And it started to go under another rapid intensification in the southeast Gulf of Mexico. So again, it could get to a potential Category 3 hurricane, but I don't think this gets to a Category 4. Again, I don't think there's enough time here. It's not, again, this system's making landfall literally in 48 hours. It might not feel like it, but it is. So it's really, or about 48 to 60 hours, I'll say that, because it has a bit of a range, but it's really making landfall quite soon. It's not going to be over the Gulf for a very extended amount of time. But again, this is the infrared imagery. I've shown this a few times, but I just want to kind of mention this again. The infrared imagery is really indicating a very strong area of convection that has begun to develop in parts of the northern Caribbean Sea. Again, what this usually means is that there's rapid, or at least some intensification happening. Doesn't mean it's rapid intensification, but there is intensification happening typically when we see this sort of activity. But don't forget, I mean, we're right around 8, 9 o'clock. We do see storms like this even during the daylight hours in the United States when severe weather happens at this sort of time. So it definitely could be something like that, but this is in the dead center where this is. So we'll have to definitely look at that pretty closely. And on Radar Omega, there's actually buoy pictures being taken here. I'm not sure if we'll be able to see anything. It goes through a little loop here. It is very dark though here. This was all taken around 6:30 to 8:30 tonight, so it was actually very dark when those photos were taken, and there's a lot of storms there now. This buoy is located right in the midst of where all that storm activity is starting to blow up in parts of the northern Caribbean Sea, so that's definitely interesting. I also mentioned this, I just want to mention it one more time. Our first major hurricane of the year will not be Idalia. Again, I keep trying to say Idalia or something. I don't know why. I just have that name in my head right now. But Idalia, it's not going to be the first major hurricane, even if it became a Category 3. It'll actually be Franklin. And Franklin will become a Category 3, perhaps a Category 4 hurricane before it makes an impact to Bermuda, and it'll be bringing some storm surge there, but again, that's going to stay out to sea. But I just want to throw that out there again. This will likely become our first major hurricane. If this somehow does, again, rapid intensification over the next 48 hours in the Gulf, it could become our second major hurricane. I don't think it'll become our first, because again, I have more confidence that Franklin will get there. It's an open ocean waters. The wind shear is pretty weak. It's pretty favorable environment right now. All right, I'll be answering questions, so if you have any questions, feel free to leave those in the chat. And again, I'll be answering questions. Again, this is a no-hype forecast. I'm not trying to fear you by any means. I'm just trying to make sure you're prepared, because there's going to be, again, a potential that this becomes a Category 3. My gut feeling is that this will become a Category 3 upon landfall. One other thing I want to mention. Hurricane watches are in effect for a large chunk of the coast, as well as storm surge warnings. This goes just southeast of Panama City. That's south of Tallahassee, so it's going to be anywhere in these pink boxes here. All the way back through Northport. This does include Tampa right now. So Tampa, be on alert. This does not mean you have to evacuate immediately. Again, hurricane watches and warnings are completely different. Hurricane watches mean the conditions are possible in the next 48 hours or so, and a warning would mean that they're expected in the next 36 hours. So there's no warnings yet in terms of hurricane warnings, so there's no need to panic, but be prepared. This is a watch because it's being issued very early, because it's making landfall in about 48 hours, maybe 60 hours. In addition to that, you want to make sure you're prepared. That's really the biggest thing here. Make sure you're prepared. If you're staying at your house through this hurricane, make sure you have flashlights on hand, generator ready, and all that sort of stuff. Just make sure you're prepared. And obviously, if you're on like a 2- or 3-story home, you'll be in a better shape if you're like inland. If you're right on the coastline, again, make sure you're monitoring the evacuation orders very closely, because there will probably be some as we go into Tuesday, especially with the storm surge that's expected to be upwards of 11 feet. Again, a super moon. That's a full moon, but it's a blue super moon that we're going to see on Wednesday night. This will kind of fuel the oceans a little bit in terms of the tides. The tides will be a bit higher, and that makes the storm surge overall worse in terms of the wave height as well. Storm surge warnings in effect as well, by the way. Again, all the way from Cape Coral and even a bit further down to the south, just north of the Key West area, so just south of Cape Coral, all the way back through parts of the Panhandle. That's going to be back up just southeast of the Panama City and south of Tallahassee. We also have tropical storm watches in effect near Orlando, Florida, but it's not including Orlando. It's for Lakeland and near the villages west of Deltona. There is a chance that tropical storm watches do get in effect for Daytona Beach and Jacksonville, parts of southeast Georgia as we go down the road. Again, we will see impacts across the East Coast with this. It's almost a guarantee in terms of some gusty winds at least, flooding rains maybe. I don't think flooding rains will be too much of a concern since this will be moving very fast, but storm surge also on the immediate coastline may occur. So that's what we'll be looking at in terms of this system. All right. Could Orlando have hurricane force winds? I doubt it. Let me go and show you some the graphic here on Radar Omega that will at least give you an idea of what we're talking about here in terms of the wind probabilities. This is over the next 120 hours in terms of the hurricane force winds. This is actually a really cool graphic. Again, you can get this on Radar Omega, top link in the description below. But notice this is the wind probabilities in terms of hurricane force winds. This is directly from the National Hurricane Center, and these are the different probabilities here. So your highest probability will be in that green shaded region. Dark green that you'll see here. Let me take off the satellite again. I don't want to kind of intrude a little bit on this, but the dark green shaded area that you see there, that's the lowest probability. So notice hurricane force wind probability for Orlando or Deltona or Daytona Beach, anywhere basically along I-4 here, it's pretty low. Unless you're near Tampa Bay, there's a better chance of that. These probabilities, again, will probably increase over the next 24 hours. It's definitely going to increase, especially as confidence grows that this will become a bit more of a stronger Category 1 or 2 hurricane. This will definitely increase, but that's where those probabilities are right now. Now, if we're just talking about tropical storm winds, the probabilities are much higher, so it's pretty much 100% chance if you're in that red shaded area. If you're back near like Daytona Beach, it's more of like a 40 to 50% chance. Jacksonville's kind of in that same boat. So the east coast of Florida still has that chance. And even back near Port St. Lucie, Fort Lauderdale, Miami, chances there are 10 to 20%. They're kind of minuscule, but they are definitely there, and that will probably increase a little bit as well. I do think tropical storm force winds will be possible. Really, let me get a better color here, but it'll basically be anywhere in this area. There's a pretty good likelihood. Let me just shade the state instead of shading the ocean. I'm not trying to help the fish a whole lot here. I mean, the fish are gonna, it just kind of happens here. But this is what we're looking at in terms of where I think it's very likely that we'll see tropical storm force winds out of this. So that entire region, anywhere in that outlined area, you're at least going to see tropical storm force winds, which is like a strong thunderstorm when you think about it. 40-mile-per-hour winds or greater. That's typically what we're talking about. Again, nothing to panic about, but it's definitely something you still want to monitor. Power could go out, that sort of thing. Even with winds that low, small trees could get knocked over as well. And then back near Port St. Lucie, Fort Lauderdale, Miami, it's a much lower chance in terms of those wind speeds. Let's go over to the probability of 50-knot winds or greater, which if you match that to miles per hour, it's about 55 miles per hour. So basically 55-mile-per-hour winds or greater. That's near a severe thunderstorm level, by the way. That's like a severe thunderstorm warning for damaging winds up to 60 miles per hour. It's pretty similar. Those impacts are, again, I think this is going to increase these probabilities, but right now the highest probabilities are, again, right on the west coast of Florida. And back near Palm Coast, Daytona Beach, and Jacksonville, a little bit lower in terms of those probabilities, around 10 to 20% for greater than 55-mile-per-hour winds. But again, there will be a little bit of storm surge probably if the system does end up going back out to the Atlantic Ocean and doesn't ride the coast too much. In addition to that, the wind speeds over here are definitely going to be up there. But again, I think these probabilities will increase as we go throughout the next 24 to 48 hours. And we're still kind of in the early stages of this. Again, it hasn't necessarily developed into a hurricane yet. It's still at 45-mile-per-hour winds down here. Let me pull that back up here on the map. But this is what currently Idalia looks like back down here in parts of the Gulf of Mexico. This is the wind field in terms of winds just exceeding tropical storm level. It's a very small wind field right now. This is, we can do a measurement on this. It's very small. It's about 25 miles wide. That's the radius. It's really not much. But it's 45-mile-per-hour winds right now. That has increased 5 miles per hour in between the 5 and 8 o'clock update tonight. So over 3 hours, it's increased by 5 miles per hour. But I do think this will start to strengthen probably by the overnight hours. This should probably get to around 60 to 65-mile-per-hour winds, maybe by tomorrow morning. But again, I do think this will intensify a bit quicker than what the National Hurricane Center is indicating. But again, there's still some uncertainty there. We're going to have to see what happens here over the next 24 hours. But I mentioned this already at the top of this. It's really concerning what we're seeing in terms of the convection that's boiling here in the Northern Caribbean Sea. This area of blue here, the blue is representing, by the way, very cold cloud tops, which is very I'll say symmetrical with thunderstorms. It's very typical. We'll typically see blue colors on the infrared imagery, at least on this infrared imagery color table. That's when we'll usually see thunderstorms with lightning and such. This is a lot of convection really starting to ramp up over the last couple hours. This is in between about 7:30 to now. So over the like last hour and a half, maybe 2 hours, there's been a lot more convection. That usually indicates some intensification. So that's a bit of a concern here. Again, this will start to intensify further as it moves off to the north, posing the threat again to Florida. How's it going from D-Land, Florida? How you doing? Further reminder, by the way, if you're new here, make sure to subscribe to the channel. And again, this live stream today is brought to you by Radar Omega. That's what we're using, by the way, for this live stream. They can help you throughout this hurricane as it makes landfall with all the tropical storm watches, warnings. You get a lot of stuff, including computer models that you cannot get on your generic weather app, and as well as the live radar feed, tons of satellite imagery, and as well as cyclone ports and buoy data, by the way. You can check that out at the top link in the description below. It's on iOS and Android. If you need a weather app, it's the best one to get on the market. Check it out. Top link in the description below. Radar Omega. I am prepared. Yes, I am in Florida, by the way. I am going to be prepared for the system. I'm just going to throw that out there, and we'll see what happens. I was going to go storm chase this, but college classes start tomorrow, so can't really do that. But I don't think I'll storm chase this unless school gets canceled or something like that. So see what happens. I'll be good. I have multiple places to go in case I have to evacuate, but I probably won't have to. But yeah, I mean, I'll be bearing down with you guys. I'll try to have a live stream. I'm going to have forecast. This is the first forecast live stream. I'll try to have another one tomorrow night if I'm able to. I'll probably have one on Tuesday night. We'll see what happens. Wednesday, I will not have a live stream for Landfall. And going into Thursday, I probably will not have a live stream for this. By Thursday, this is going to be back over along the Carolina coast. So maybe something, but we'll kind of see what evolves. Right. Radar Omega is $8.99 on iOS or Android, but it's worth it. Trust me, it's really worth it. It's like a cup of coffee at Starbucks. Starbucks is getting expensive. Your classes, but they're always during the biggest weather events. I'm back in school starting tomorrow, so can't really do much about that. It's just the timing. I mean, college classes are basically from September. For most schools, they're from September all the way through beginning of May for most colleges. So, I mean, it's kind of how it goes. It's not intentional. I'm not trying to just skip out on these events by any means, but it just happens. But I will not be live probably for Landfall, but I'll be live Monday night, probably Tuesday night is possible. Tornado risk. It's not really high right now. Let me outline the Storm Prediction Center's forecast. Let's go to I'm gonna take off the satellite imagery again. This is what we're looking at right now in terms of the risk of tornadoes on Tuesday. So tossing trampolines on Tacos Tuesday. Right now, there is a marginal risk for a tornado risk back across the west coast of Florida. Let me take off the hurricane track as well. There we go. So this is the area that we're looking at for a 2% probability in terms of the tornado risk. Again, it's not very high right now. I wouldn't be surprised, though, if we get a slight risk, especially right along the coastline. Let me show you the computer models actually on this, because I do want to show you the tornado parameter values. That'll give you an idea of the tornado risk overall, because I do think the tornado risk will go up a little bit, maybe a bit further to the east as well. Yeah, Radar Omega is really worth it. The price and everything, it's 100% worth it. Highly recommend. Let me get to the... I just lost my train of thought. All right, computer models. And we'll go ahead and do the GFS NAM. Let's do the NAM model. The NAM model, by the way, has been seriously overboard in the system. I'm just going to go and show you what it shows real quick. Again, just kind of for giggles, I guess. But this system, I mean, the NAM model is always overdoing tropical storms and hurricanes like all the time. So I'll show you this real quick, but I'm going to show you the tornado parameter values on this. This will give you an idea of the tornado risk. This is what it's showing. I'll just kind of throw you through the simulation, but this is going through into basically Tuesday afternoon. This is by 5 p.m. This is 8 p.m. This is Wednesday morning. Again, this usually, I mean, the NAM model's been showing millibar levels of like 890. Now it's record-breaking, 1, and 2, it's not going to happen. That just doesn't happen in the Atlantic Ocean. 890 millibars is absolutely insane, so that's not going to happen. Let me show you, though, the tornado parameter values. This will be giving you an idea of the tornado risk. Let's go to that. Again, tornado parameter values are a little bit of one of those things that might be a little bit hard to understand, but I'll kind of guide you through it because they are one of the more in-depth tools that we usually use. We don't use them too often on weather forecasts, but I'll show you anyways. We're just kind of going through the loop here real quick. All right, this is going to be 5 p.m. on Tuesday. So notice the tornado parameter values. You'll notice this very light shaded area. So this white kind of gray color, that's a very, very low to near zero chance of a tornado, but that means that there's at least enough wind shear for there to perhaps be maybe a brief tornado. Usually nothing too crazy. Once we go closer to the late evening hours, actually, I might have to change the computer model because this thing's nowhere near where it's supposed to be. Yeah, we'll go with it for now. I'll show you a different computer model after this because the NAM model is kind of not really doing it right. But this is what we're looking at going to Wednesday morning. So notice these green values right along the coastline. We'll have some outer bands with this. Obviously, most hurricanes have outer bands. Those outer bands will have a greater chance of producing that tornado risk. So there could be a couple tornadoes with that going into Tuesday night, as well as into Wednesday morning. And those outer bands will move throughout Florida, and those will pose the threat for a tornado. And that'll exist anywhere, really, I think, from Daytona Beach, maybe Jacksonville, back through Tampa in the Cedar Key area. And then once we go into the afternoon hours, notice the tornado parameter values they start to drop off a bit. That green shaded region will indicate the tornado risk at least being on the lower side of things, and then eventually going into late Wednesday into Thursday, the tornado parameter values are a bit higher on the coastline, but that's a bit exaggerated because that's where the center of where this tropical storm or perhaps even hurricane will be, so don't get too caught up in that. So again, it's kind of one of those tools that really needs to have a meteorological breakdown because, again, some things are a little bit exaggerated like that. Again, we're not going to see a serious tornado threat right along North Myrtle Beach, for example, if this takes this exact track, because, again, this is right near the circulation, so it's not always going to be perfect. It's not necessarily, like, matched up. So I just want to throw that out there. Let me find a different model, though. The HRR model actually might be getting pretty close. I'm not sure if it's there yet. I'm going to check really quick, and then if not, I'll go... Actually, it did not fully run through. Never mind. All right, let's go to... Maybe it did. No, it did not. All right, let's go to a different computer model. I'm not sure if the wrap doesn't go far enough, I don't think, either. This is one of the other models. This is the HWRF model. I don't ever use this for the most part, but I'm going to show you it anyways. Because this might give us an idea. Actually, this will be kind of a cool little simulation. So let's do this. This is a little bit of a loop of what this will do over the next few days. Again, the HWRF model does overplay these, usually all the time. So it's not going to probably be this intense or this strong. But I'll give you an idea of at least the outer bands here. So let me pause it right here. So this is about 2 p.m. on Tuesday. Notice these outer bands. This is going to display the outer bands very easily. You'll notice those outer bands are going to be right near the Cape Coral, Northport, Tampa area. That's where the tornado risk would be. So right along the west coast here of Florida, that is where the tornado risk will be the greatest, at least during Tuesday afternoon. As we go throughout the evening hours, so by 5 o'clock, those outer bands still impacting parts of the coastline. That's where that tornado risk will be a bit more increased. This is by 8 p.m., so still some outer bands a bit disorganized. And then as we go closer to 11 p.m., still a few outer bands, but again, nothing too out of the ordinary. That's going to be still a low-end tornado risk by then. Overnight, we'll still have that tornado risk, again, probably in this area here. That's where that tornado risk will be. So just west of Orlando, back through Gainesville. And then eventually by 5 to 8 in the morning, the outer bands are primarily near the Ocala area, the villages, where I know New Bucky's is going in, I believe near Ocala. And then eventually going closer to 8 in the morning, those outer bands will start to actually be a little more intense, probably back near Orlando, Deltona, and Daytona Beach. That is where we'll be watching for some of those outer bands to perhaps produce an isolated tornado or two during the morning hours on Wednesday. And eventually the tornado risk will be shifting more up closer to the Carolinas, as well as eastern Georgia. There could be maybe a couple tornadoes there, and then eventually this continues to move to the north and east. But again, the HWRF model, you might have noticed, again, it shows a very crazy eye of this storm. It looks like a Category 6 hurricane. Again, you might get that reference, but that's pretty much what we're looking at. This is not going to happen. Again, I don't expect this happening. This computer model has been shown a lot on Twitter, or X social, whatever you want to call it. It's a bit more of a hype model at this point. It's showing 140, 150 mile per hour winds. I don't expect that. That computer model usually does overplay tropical systems. It's known to do that. So just throwing that out there. It's a better chance of this being a Category 2 hurricane upon landfall, if not maybe a low-end Category 3 hurricane. So that's currently what we're looking at in terms of the tornado risk, and again, the overall category of what this will be. Let me go back to tropical. Let's go and put this stuff back on again. And this is, again, the infrared imagery. We'll put that on. All right, more questions. Again, if you have any questions, leave those in the chat. I'm answering some at a time. I'm going kind of in-depth on a lot of these questions. Since we're doing a live stream, it's easier to do. Thank you, by the way, James, for the $10 super chat. I appreciate the generosity. Thank you, James. Also, thank you, Cindy, for the super chat earlier. The $2 super chat, I appreciate that. Sorry I missed that. Thank you. I was talking a lot earlier. Storm surge values. Let me pull that up for you. So, storm surge is going to be the greatest, probably near the Cedar Key area. Go over to here. And right now, this is the overall look at the spaghetti models. Again, I already showed this, but the probable area of landfall will probably be in between Tampa and as well as kind of the, I don't know, south of Tallahassee area. We'll just go with that. This is a very rural area up here in the Florida panhandle. But here's the storm surge values right now for really Tuesday afternoon, evening into the Wednesday time frame. Notice that storm surge is possible all across Florida. This extends from the Indian Pass area near Panama City all the way back through the Key West. It's a very large area for Wednesday. And one thing you want to really look at here is where those greatest values are, but you still want to look outside of that because storm surge is possible across the entire west coast of Florida. Very concerning, obviously. But the highest storm surge currently forecasted to be in between the Osceola River, back just north of Tampa near the Anclote River area. Between 7 to 11 feet of storm surge is possible. Again, this value is subject to change. I wouldn't be surprised if it goes higher. Again, we have a full moon on Wednesday night. That means the tides will be higher. That means the storm surge could also be a bit higher. So we'll have to watch that closely. Back over closer to just out the Tallahassee, storm surge is going to be between 2 to 4 feet, maybe up to 4 to 7 feet, very small area. And again, when we have hurricanes like this, let's just say this hurricane makes landfall right in here. Usually when we have storm surge, it's going to be the most substantial around and as well as east of where the hurricane is, because those strong winds going this direction, that'll increase the storm surge up and down the coastline up through here. So the storm surge will be much greater really along the east coast and then back, or sorry, not the east coast. I don't know. I might have said east coast a couple times, but west coast, it'll be much greater though, basically anywhere along this area. So southeast, east, and northeast are where the eye makes landfall, and right around the center of it, that's where the greatest storm surge is usually at. Back near Tampa Bay, 3 to 5 feet of storm surge currently forecasted. But again, if this starts to track a bit further down here to the south, for example, it's definitely possible that that storm surge will go much higher. But right now, the forecast is it's going to go probably north of Cedar Key and then again south of Tallahassee. And storm surge is also, by the way, possible along the east coast of Florida. It's not yet in the forecast, but there's a bit more uncertainty of where the system actually goes past where it makes landfall. So if it goes further over here, better chance of storm surge, especially right along the coastline here. And then if it goes further to the north, we're still probably talking about at least some minor storm surge, but it'll probably be somewhere around 1 to 3 feet, maybe 2 to 4 feet in some areas. So that's the storm surge forecast. And this is the total rainfall amount forecast right now. I don't totally agree with this right now. I think this will be further to the east in terms of the heaviest rainfall. But this area will be indicating probably around 6 inches of rain, and then yellow is going to be around 4 inches, 2 inches for dark green, and 1 inch for the light green area. So that's kind of the estimate right now. So most of Florida, at least the east coast, back through central Florida, along the Treasure Coast and Space Coast, going to be somewhere right around about 1/2 inch to 1.5 inches, and then back through parts of western Florida, and as well as really along the coastline. Coastline is where we'll be talking about the totals being upwards of 4 to 8 inches. An isolated 10-inch amount of rain is not out of the question. So that's what we're looking at in terms of storm surge and as well as the overall, again, look at this storm. Let's go back over here. All right. This reminds me a lot of Ian. This doesn't remind me as much as Michael. It's, again, not going to be like Ian exactly. I can't stress this enough, but Ian was way stronger by this time. Ian, let me go back to, let's take off the satellite again. But Ian, back when it was ongoing, it was a Category 3 hurricane right here. Really about in the same position, not too far from where Ian was, and right now it's a tropical storm. It's a weak tropical storm, by the way. It's not even that strong right now, 45-mile-per-hour winds. It'll probably be upwards of 50 to 55 by the 11 p.m. update with that big burst of convection. But as this moves to the north, it'll become a Category 1 hurricane, probably a Category 2 somewhere around here is my guess. Again, that's my personal thought, and then maybe a Category 3 upon landfall, back up in parts of the, again, Florida Panhandle near Cedar Key. South of Havana, though, again, Category 3 hurricane. That was Ian. It became a Category 4 hurricane, and then it was a Category 4 upon landfall. So again, two entirely different systems. Ian was way stronger before it entered the Gulf. In this case with, I keep thinking I'm going to pronounce this, but Idalia, with Idalia, it's going to be in the Northern Caribbean Sea as a tropical storm. Once it enters the Gulf, it'll probably be a strong tropical storm, maybe a low-end Category 1 hurricane. So again, they're two different systems in terms of intensity, very different in terms of intensity, and so it's going to have a little bit more time to develop. It's going to have less time to develop as well, and it's overall just a weaker system right now. There's a lot more wind shear in that area, at least over the last 24 hours there was, not nearly as much anymore, and as this rides up closer to the northeast Gulf of Mexico, there could be some rapid intensification. With that process, it could very well strengthen from a Category 1, maybe a strong Category 1 or low-end Category 2, to maybe a Category 3 before landfall. And again, Ian went under 2 rapid intensifications. One was in the Caribbean and one was back over in the southeast Gulf of Mexico. So thank you, Key, for the $5 super chat. I appreciate your generosity. Thank you. Could the east-northeast movement that it currently has bring it close to Tampa? No. So the east-northeast movement that it could go closer to Tampa, but with the east-northeasterly movement, it's not going to be that for much longer. It's going to be going off to the north. Has begun to slowly actually drift to the north. If we go to the, I'm going to probably pull up the satellite imagery, I think, here. Go and do the satellite imagery. This will be the satellite imagery, so you'll kind of notice over time. This is this morning, so we're doing a full loop of today. It was moving not really anywhere. It was kind of moving, even maybe backtracking a little bit, but it's moving very slowly here to the east. And the eye is really right in here. It's kind of hard to see. It's, again, you're not going to really be able to see it here. And now it's beginning to move slightly to the north and east. It's barely moving to the north and east. It's really slow, but infrared imagery doesn't really show it as well. But that's kind of what we're looking at. Again, it's very stationary right now, but it will be moving off to the north pretty quickly over the next 24 hours. And you'll notice a little bit more here. The burst of convection doesn't always necessarily indicate direction, but it is starting to move more to the north. So in the next National Hurricane Center update, which is at 11 p.m., we'll have an idea of what the intensity is. It will probably intensify by the 11 p.m. update is my guess. And yeah, see what happens from there. Is there a hurricane every year? There's a hurricane every year usually in the Atlantic, but in terms of one hitting land, I don't remember the last year that we didn't have a hurricane make landfall in the United States. I don't know what the exact year is. It's been a long time though, I'm pretty sure. If somebody has that statistic off the top of their head, let me know. Yeah, it was moving at 2 miles per hour earlier. You could have probably walked faster than how fast the system's going right now. Again, it's not going very fast. How's it going, Jaws? Welcome back. Seen you in a while. Thank you, Scion, for the 199. Any chance that this could hit Tallahassee? Yes, Tallahassee will see impacts. It probably will not make a direct landfall there, but again, don't forget, the cone of uncertainty is huge, right? It's a huge area. So the eye of this storm could make landfall anywhere in this area. It does not necessarily mean it's going to make landfall right here where this line is. It very well can make landfall outside of this. So it could go a little bit further to the north. Computer models over the last 24 to 48 hours have been indicating that this would go more into this direction. That's where a lot of computer models have been taking this over the past 24 hours. There has been an easterly shift. But again, things could change a little bit. Tallahassee will at least see some rainfall out of this, perhaps some gusty winds. I'm not foreseeing direct hurricane impacts as of right now, though, for Tallahassee. Power outages, again, possible. That goes for anything with gusty winds anyways. Yeah, I mean, the cone of uncertainty, again, I can't stress this enough, but you could see impacts outside of the cone of uncertainty as well. Tropical storm force winds are actually going to be possible, even back down near like Port St. Lucie, Miami, Cape Coral, Orlando. It will be possible down those directions. But again, the probabilities are going to be much lower, and those winds will probably be more behaved, probably closer to like 30 to 45 mile per hour winds. So again, tropical storm force winds are 39 miles per hour and greater. So 40 to 45 mile per hour winds might mix in there back down parts of the southern Florida region, so Cape Coral, Miami, Port St. Lucie, again, well out of the way of the eye, but it's definitely possible. So impacts will be felt outside of these areas. So no hurricanes impacted the United States in 2015. Thank you, Ben. So that was the last time. It was actually not technically that long ago, but that was about 8 years ago. So again, most of the time we'll have some sort of hurricane make landfall in the United States. It happens more often than not. All right, so we have the whole list. 1951, 1962, 1963. So there are 2 years in a row there. 1973, 1978, 1981, 1982, 1990, 1994, 2000, 2001, 2006, 2009, 2010, 2013, 2015. So we've seen it about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, about 7 times in the past 23 years. There hasn't been a hurricane making landfall. So it's about 33%. No, 30. I think a hair under 30%. 7 divided by 23. I think it's like 29%. Nope, 30.4%. So 30.4% of the time so far this year, or so far this century, there has not been a hurricane making landfall. There's a live cam view, by the way, out of parts of southern Louisiana. Southern Louisiana will not see major impacts out of this, but live cam's there. Again, today we're using Radar Omega. That's what we've been using throughout this live stream. You can access satellite imagery, computer models, radar, and much more on Radar Omega. You can stay well ahead of times with the hurricane that's going to be making landfall here within the next 48 to 60 hours. Again, you can check out Radar Omega with the top link in the description below. And you can get it on iOS or Android on your favorite mobile phone. Check it out. Again, top link in the description below for Radar Omega. Again, I highly recommend it. And it's, again, 100 times better than whatever weather app you probably have on your phone right now. So, my opinion. Odds of Tampa landfall. I'm not going to really give odds, but it's way more likely that this will make landfall directly north of Tampa. Tampa will probably still see some moderate to major impacts, though, out of this. Regardless of it making landfall maybe 50 to 100 miles to your north, it's definitely a better chance that there will still be some impacts there. Dave Scion for the 199, going back to Texas on the 30th. Any delays? I don't know where you're going from and to. If you're going from Florida, I mean, I would have probably, I mean, I don't know if you're using a plane, a car, it's kind of limited context. But if you're leaving on the 30th and you're like Cedar Key area, you're gonna have a lot of issues. If you're in Gainesville, Tallahassee, Live Oak, Jacksonville, probably gonna be a lot of issues on Wednesday. What's up with the bear? I don't know. I've had this bear, this was an impulse buy, I think at Costco back in like 2017. About 6 years old. I wasn't 6 years old, sorry. it's about 6 years ago when I bought it. And I still have it. It's been in the closet collecting cobwebs for like 5 years, so yeah, I don't know, it's just there. I need to name it something though. Bear does a sportscast, yes. I like the new setup, thank you. I do too, I do like the setup. I have an AC to myself, it's great. I can actually air condition my room. Usually when I did live streams, back in my old studio, it'd be around 78 to 79 degrees. So, it was warmer. Right now, like 76. It's a little bit cooler. I'm kind of used to the warm indoor temperature now, so. Thanks, Davis. Appreciate you subscribing. Live on the water in Tampa. Worst angle for this thing to make, thing to take would be, so for Tampa, the worst case scenario would be either a direct landfall or this going like maybe within 50 miles of you. So it may landfall here or here or here. Storm surge would be much greater here along the coastline. So that would be worst case scenario, pretty much. Would be just to your north. In terms of storm surge and winds and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, the supermoon, again, I mentioned it a few times, but the supermoon's a big deal here. Again, the tides are much higher during a supermoon. I'm not sure what the big difference is. I'm not sure what, like, the exact foot difference is. I'll have to probably look it up, but the supermoon is going to increase the tide. So high tide is going to be higher than it's normally is at during, like, a normal moon. Let's just say, I don't know, like half moon or something like that. It's usually going to be, the tides will be higher, and with a supermoon, it's that much worse. So that's a big concern. That'll obviously increase the tides. That'll increase the storm surge. And in all essence, there's going to be a lot of issues in terms of the storm surge and all that. Higher wave heights and all that. I don't know if, I mean, there's sometimes surfers out there. I don't recommend you surfing, but the waves will definitely be higher. What about southeast movement? The southeast movement right now, it's about to start moving back to the north. So it's not going to be going southeast for that much longer. It's a good one, potato. That is actually a good one. Now I get it. Yeah, we did a honeybee ad a while back, and the bear, what was the thingamabobber? Can't remember the logo. Panama City, Florida. Panama City probably will not see much out of this. I'm going to be brutally honest. Unless this takes a super westerly path, it's probably not going to be much for you. It might be a few passing tropical showers. Maybe a storm. Gusty winds up to maybe 40 miles per hour, but usually on the western side of tropical storms and hurricanes, especially with this kind of pathing, they usually don't see that many impacts on the western side. So I don't see much happening over in Panama City right now. Again, maybe some tropical storm force winds, maybe a tropical storm watch, possibly. Again, there are currently hurricane watches in effect up and down the coast from just southeast of Panama City near Tallahassee, all the way back through Tampa and down toward Northport, just north of Cape Coral, which again, Cape Coral is where Ian made landfall last year. Tropical storm watch is in effect just west of Orlando, so a pretty large area there as well. And that is ongoing there. And there are also storm surge watches in effect all the way from southern or just south of Tallahassee back through just south of Cape Coral. So it's a pretty large area. So I don't think Panama City will see anything too crazy out of that. Yeah, it's moving east-northeast. It's not moving southeast. Next update from the National Hurricane Center is in about 85 minutes. Probably sooner, though. They usually do it like 10 minutes early, so about 75 minutes from now. And with those new updates, we're definitely have to see what we're exactly looking at in terms of the direction. It's probably, my guess here is that the direction's probably going to be northeast by that point. If not, it's going to be north-northeast. I mean, it's starting to move more to the north. You can see the convection here. It's blowing up. Right in here. It is blowing up right now. So. Now, talk about some of the potential impacts to the North Carolina and South Carolina coast. I can, but the problem is there's a lot of uncertainty already with where this will go. Again, there's a huge cone of uncertainty right now where this eye will go. And, I mean, there's basically 2, maybe 3 scenarios that could happen. The first scenario would be this goes out to sea. If it does that, the storm surge might be there on the coast. There'll be higher waves, potentially some flooding rains. It's a little bit less likely, though, that it'll go directly out to sea like that. More likely, it'll stay right along the coastline. That would promote the potential for some flooding rains, especially right along the coastline. Storm surge also being possible on the immediate coastline. And higher winds. So we'll be definitely watching for the threat of, hurricane force, or probably not hurricane force winds, but at least tropical storm force winds around 50 to 60 miles per hour on the immediate coastline if it rides up the coast. Right now, it's forecasted to stay as a stronger tropical storm as it goes up the coast. I wouldn't rule out this as a hurricane. As it goes that direction, we'll see how it interacts with land. The other scenario, scenario 3, which I think is less likely of the 3, it stays well inland, and that would promote more of a flooding risk and a tornado risk on the east coast. So you take whatever basically, what would you like? Would you like a tornado and rain risk? Would you like more of a storm surge and flooding risk? Or would you just like some showers, maybe an isolated tornado, and maybe a little bit of storm surge and higher waves on the coast? I mean, that's really what you're dealing with. There's 3 different scenarios, all of which have bad characteristics to them, but I'd say scenario 1 that I mentioned at the beginning is probably the best case scenario in my opinion. This would be probably worst case scenario. This would also probably be up there in terms of one of the worst case scenarios. So, I mean, there's basically 3 bad options with this right now. Thank you, Keith, for becoming a minimum velocity member. I appreciate it. Welcome to Velocities. Let's get some hearts in the chat for Keith. No problem. And I'm trying to answer as many questions as possible, so if you have any, feel free to leave them in the chat. Virginia will probably not see any impacts out of this. If you're on the immediate coastline near Virginia Beach, watch out for some rip currents, higher waves, possibly some minor storm surge, but I'm not really foreseeing anything that crazy there. If you're inland, it's just going to be some rain. And even then, you're probably not going to see a whole lot. Let's go to the GFS model on Radar Omega. Again, we are using Radar Omega on this live stream. You can check it out, the top link in the description. You can get this on your iOS and Android device, believe it or not, so check that out. This is the GFS model, so we'll go through this up toward Virginia. And this is kind of how the GFS model puts this. So, GFS model kind of has it sitting near the center of where the system is, but the GFS has started to track this just a little bit left of this line, which is, again, this tropical storm hurricane could go really anywhere. It could go over here, it could go over here. So anywhere near Tampa, back through basically Panama City area, that's pretty much the range of where this eye could go. GFS model keeps it slightly left of that line. Makes landfall going into Wednesday morning. This is around 11 in the morning. Heavy rainfall across Georgia, so some flooding rains possible. Again, this is pretty much worst case scenario in terms of where this is going to go. This is pretty much worst case scenario. So we're talking about flooding rains along the coastline, maybe an isolated tornado risk on the northeast side of this, probably a pretty low chance overall. And also some damaging winds going to be possible right along the coastline. Storm surge also definitely in play. By 8 p.m. on Wednesday, this continues to move through Carolinas. Flash flooding is definitely going to be in play. And then once this goes toward Virginia Beach, heavy rain possible there, maybe some minor storm surge, and then this moves out to sea. So central and western Virginia, you're not going to see anything out of this, but that's currently what we're looking at in terms of the GFS model. Rainfall totals, you might be wondering, how much rain could I see? GFS model is really keeping the rainfall primarily inland, and obviously in the Gulf of Mexico. So I think I have a loop going on here. Oh, never mind. All right, there we go. Let me take off the tropical layers here real quick. And this is what we're looking at in terms of the rainfall totals. Again, subject to change, but the highest rainfall totals will be in that red area. So what that means is that red area is indicating rainfall totals between 6 to 10 inches. So if the GFS model is all right and dandy, we're talking about 6 to 10 inches of rain all across the North and South Carolina areas near Columbia, Augusta. If Fayetteville, Greenville, north of Wilmington, and also back through near Tallahassee. But again, if it takes more of a more easterly path here, so if it goes further this direction, heavier rainfall totals right in here along the coastline. Storm surge will definitely be more of a concern if this just stays far enough inland. So really the bigger concern will be scenario 2 and 3 that I mentioned. Barometer for the bear name, but with bear, that's actually a good one. Yeah, the supermoon that's on Wednesday, I don't think is the closest to Earth that moon will be, but it's very close. So, yeah, the supermoon, again, is going to be a big thing that we have to pay attention to. Has to be basically evaluated in all forecasts, because it is going to be a big change. The tides will be higher, and all that sort of stuff. Which, again, will increase storm surge, increase the wave height, and just makes things that much more concerning. Let me check out the tides real quick. Let me see what the difference is here. Again, the supermoon will make it so that, again, the tides are going to be much higher than normal. But tides for Tampa Bay. I'm just kind of looking to see if I can get a general idea here. So, the high tide today. This is last week. Why am I looking at last week's tides? But like, for example, recently the tides have been right around 2.5 meters from zero. But I'm trying to see if I can find a prediction. That was past data. So forecasted tides will be upwards of almost 3.5 meters, or 3.5 feet, excuse me. So basically, it's going to increase by about 1 to 2 feet in terms of the tides with that supermoon, which in all essence will mean that the storm surge will probably be about 1 foot to 2 higher. So that's a supermoon difference. That's approximate for most areas. So that's the big difference with supermoons. And that's what we're going to have on Wednesday. Again, Wednesday night, that's the rare blue supermoon. It only happens about once a decade. By the way, look at this outflow boundary in the Gulf of Mexico. This is kind of cool. This happened earlier today. It'll come back here in a second. But you can see these storms all off this outflow boundary in the middle. Kind of cool. Right here. Outflow boundary moving west. You got storms forming to the east. Pretty cool stuff. You actually have more of that in Florida, too. There's a sea breeze, most likely, that developed and that brought some storms over there near Tampa. So kind of cool little feature there. Yeah, the supermoon will not be good for those right along the immediate east coast, for those like in Georgia, South Carolina, and North Carolina. Now, depending on where this actually tracks to, that's kind of, again, to be determined. We're going to have to wait and see what happens over the next like 24 to 48 hours. But again, if this tracks right along the coastline here with the supermoon, the tides are going to be about 1 to 2 feet higher. So storm surge naturally will be higher right along the east coast here from Georgia back through North Carolina. That's obviously not good news. It's really the worst time for there to be a supermoon, right when a hurricane's making landfall. So, yes, this thing has really blown up. I've mentioned this a few times, but the convection has blown up substantially over the last, really, 2 to 3 hours. It's, again, intensifying pretty quickly. I'm guessing, again, we're still about an hour-ish out from the National Hurricane Center's next update for the system, but my guess is that this is now upwards of, like, 55-mile-per-hour winds. With how this has intensified really quickly over the last like 3 to 4 hours. This was not like this at, I mean, it was like this at 8 o'clock, but the wind speed was determined a little bit before then. So St. Petersburg is not in the clear. Guys, if you're anywhere in Florida, I'll give you a couple exclusions. But Miami, Port St. Lucie, and west of Panama City, you don't have to be that concerned about this. I would watch it very closely, but you don't have to be super concerned. If you're anywhere else, though, in Florida, you are going to want to watch this very closely. Take the proper precautions, be prepared, because there will be tropical storm, if not even hurricane impacts, even outside of this cone of uncertainty. So anywhere in here, and again, I'm just talking about Florida. I'm not talking about Georgia here, but anywhere in Florida, right in this area, you have the chance for impacts out of this tropical storm and eventually into a hurricane once it gets closer to Florida. You're going to see some hurricane impacts, maybe some tropical storm impacts if you're more inland. So, yeah, again, if you're in like Port St. Lucie, Miami, basically down the Treasure Coast into Miami, I'm not nearly as concerned for you guys. It's not nearly as bad. By the way, talk about a close call with Franklin. I just want to mention this. Franklin. It's a Category 2 hurricane. It's about to become a Category 3 and a 4 hurricane. It's not even that far from Florida. Right now, this is currently about 600 miles to the east of Florida. It looks a lot closer, but I mean, it's really not that far. Even some of these outer bands right now from the system are only about 250 miles from Florida. That's kind of crazy. I just want to throw that out there. It's moving to the north, so don't worry about that one. But crazy stuff. They're not very far away from each other. Luckily, it's staying out to the east and out to sea. It's going to impact Bermuda, unfortunately, but... yeah, if you're anywhere along, like, the Palm Coast area, Daytona Beach, Palm Bay, I mean, overall, further north you go here along the east coast of Florida, the greater chance, I would say, there is of some impacts in terms of some storm surge, and maybe some flooding rains as we go into Tuesday night into Wednesday. Flooding rains probably won't be that big of a concern for this area because it'll be such a quick-moving tropical storm. Inland, hurricane in the ocean here in the Gulf of Mexico. Palm Bay, I mean, there might be some tropical showers, maybe an isolated tornado on Wednesday, but I think even Palm Bay, you're probably in, not the clear, but you're not really going to have to be that concerned about this. So I don't think it'll go that far to the east. But hey, if it does take a more of a track toward Tampa, and it goes like this, which again is it is possible right on the eastern side here, the cone of uncertainty, Palm Bay could see some impacts out of this. But I would honestly say if you're anywhere in Florida, just make sure you're watching the weather forecast at least twice a day on your TV, on YouTube, whatever. Just make sure you're staying updated with the latest just in case anything changes. And make sure you're subscribed to our channel. We're doing daily forecasts on this right now. So make sure you're subscribed and click the bell icon so you are notified with the latest videos and live streams. Again, we'll keep you updated with the latest details. So, again, it's free to do. The red button down below. And we'll keep you posted with the latest. If anything does change that's major out of this system, we'll definitely keep you posted. Need rain in Panama City Beach, but not this. I'll show you the rainfall totals here on the GFS model. Again, this is probably going to be pretty reminiscent of what we'll see. Whether it actually happens exactly in these areas is kind of to be determined, but I'll show you the rainfall totals real quick. There will be some rain in Panama City, but it's probably not going to be substantial. So this is what we're looking at. This is going through Tuesday night, or this is Tuesday night here. And then this going into Wednesday. Notice Panama City over the next, like, 84 hours, next 3 days, maybe a half an inch to an inch of rain. If this goes further to the west, you could possibly get upwards of 2 to 3 inches, but you're not going to see substantial rain out of this. And even back through, like, you know, Orlando, for example, if this system takes a direct path up here, like just north of Cedar Key, Orlando might not even see that much rain, maybe a half an inch to an inch of rain. I love that neon sign, but the bear has got to go. Who thinks in the chat that that bear in the background should go? Or should we keep Franklin in the background? I don't even know why I have it there. Actually, it blocks out the wire to that neon light. Just to throw that out there. So you can't see the wire. It's very hard to see to begin with, but you could see it. Let me, back to the satellite imagery here. Keep Franklin. Hashtag keep Franklin. We're gonna get that trending on Twitter someday. Franklin is not named after a hurricane, by the way, or tropical storm. Isn't Franklin a name this year? I could be mistaken. Franklin was a name. Might be a name. Let's see. Franklin. That's actually happening right now, isn't it? Yeah, Franklin. I don't know why I had to think about that. I was about to say Franklin sounds very familiar. I named Franklin before he frankly even developed, so that's just kind of out of nowhere. I am reporting on Franklin. Thank you. Brain fart. That's funny. I was not actually intended that way. I thought of Franklin like weeks ago before that even happened, so that's kind of crazy. Might have to retire the name Franklin. If this becomes a Category 4 hurricane, we're gonna have to rename it. Even a Category 3. I mean, right now Franklin's a Category 2. It's gonna become a Category 4 again, going toward Bermuda. Might have to retire the name if it's a Category 3. Might have to be an expired name. Maybe we can name it Chad. Let's do that. Friendly reminder, by the way, if you're just tuning in for the first time, make sure to like the stream. It does help get this out to more people. Also, make sure to subscribe to the channel, and we'll keep you updated with the latest. And again, this live stream today is brought to you by Radar Omega. You can download Radar Omega with the top link in the description below on iOS and Android. That's what we're currently using here. You can see the different Cyclone ports. That's their live radar, or their live cams that are on the map. There's dozens of them here across the United States. They do help you to see different storms that are ongoing here across the country here on Radar Omega. In addition to that, you can customize this radar as much as you would like in terms of the color tables and all that sort of stuff. So if you're a weather geek wanting to make your own radar, this is the best way to do it. Satellite imagery, computer models, and live radar feed and more is available on Radar Omega. It's the top link in the description below on iOS and Android. I do highly recommend it. It's really the best radar app on the market right now. Is YouTube my full-time job? It's technically a student is my full-time job. YouTube is not really my quote-unquote full-time job, though. But I do this pretty often. It's technically my job, though. Helping to pay off for college, which is so expensive. Waffle House open? Oh yeah, we need the Waffle House meter for Florida. HMON is showing 947 millibars upon landfall. Yeah, again, I think a lot of these models that start with like H and then have something else other than R after it, like HRR model, that's the only one I really somewhat trust for the tropics. Like the HW RF model, it's gonna pop up on here. Let's go to that one for Idalia. This is what we're looking at. I mean, this is what this one shows. This shows like a 800 millibar system. I mean, 800 millibars is just not something that happens here at the surface, but it does kind of show that. You'll see this here. Like, look at this eye here that the HWRF model is showing. This is 25 miles wide and whatnot. This might even be wider here that it's showing. Again, don't take these seriously. You might see these a lot on Twitter or Facebook. Is it possible? Not really. This is not possible here. This, at the most, in my opinion, will become a Category 3 hurricane. So, tomorrow, Ben. Start up tomorrow. But, Category 3 hurricane, in my opinion, is the highest that this will get. Even then, a strong Category 3 is definitely possible. I don't think this gets to a Category 4 hurricane. It just doesn't have that much time. That's what I'm thinking. Unless something really happens quickly here in the southeast Gulf of Mexico in the next 24 hours, where this becomes a Category 2 hurricane, like way down here, maybe it's in play, but it would take a lot for that to happen. That would require rapid intensification now, and not in, you know, a few days. Or not a few days, more like 36 hours. Orlando should be fine. Again, Orlando will have some gusty winds at least. There will also be the potential for some heavy rainfall, so there might be some isolated flash flooding. And that's really the main concerns. I don't expect any major impacts right now to Orlando, but again, that is subject to change. If it takes a very easterly path in this cone of uncertainty, your impacts will be greater. There could also be an isolated tornado in that area. Maybe two. There's a severe thunderstorm warning, by the way, back down in parts of southwest Louisiana. And again, Radar Omega is adding more cyclone ports. I just want to throw this out there. This was not here before. They have a new cyclone port in Houston. They have a couple in Florida. They're not working right now, but they should be back up here soon. So we'll have those for live coverage. Awesome. Live cams. One thing I do want to throw it out is that bear in the background. It's kind of sad that it's like under a lightning strike. I don't know if that's really appropriate, but what about Gainesville? Gainesville is really going to probably see the most major impacts for a city inland. Really, regardless of where this goes. I mean, if it goes further over here, it might be a bit different, but with the current track, it would again, this is likely going to make landfall somewhere in here. That's my expectation. It'll make landfall just south of Tallahassee, between there and Spring Hill. That's kind of the range here. So Gainesville, you're going to probably see the most impacts inland, and it'll probably be, I don't know if you'll see really flooding rains. Depends on how far east this goes. But there's very well a chance that you'll see at least some hot, I mean, you could see some hurricane force winds even inland there, depending on how strong this is upon landfall. And yeah, that'll be the main concern. So there will be probably some power outages in that area. Cape Coral should be okay. You're watching for storm surge upwards of 3 to 5 feet right now. That's in the forecast. So storm surge is a concern for sure in the Cape Coral area. If it takes more of an easterly path, it'll be more concerning for storm surge. There will be the potential for some tropical storm force winds, but those are the main two concerns. So storm surge, tropical storm force winds right now are the main concerns. Things again could change. If it goes further down to the south, it might be a bit more concerning for you. That goes for a lot of areas. Again, it's much more concerning in my opinion if this goes right into here. But at the same token, it won't be as concerning for like the East Coast back near South Carolina and North Carolina. But there's a lot of pros and cons to the track of the system because it's basically like three options in my opinion. One, it stays well inland, which would still be very concerning because of the heavy rainfall factor. Middle of this, which is very likely at this point, that would be very concerning. And if it went this direction, it would be very concerning for parts of Central Florida, but it would be way less concerning for the East Coast up near South Carolina and North Carolina. So there's like three options here. Those are the three main options, at least, that could happen. And obviously, the two most concerning ones would be the ones that would be going up the East Coast. So, see you, Clay. Have a good night. Has Idalia at 45 knots. Might be wind gusts. I'll check real quick. The National Hurricane Center has not had an update on this, so I will check. Let's see. Tropical Storm Idalia, 45 knots. Yeah, it does say that. This is the 8 p.m. update. It also says 992 millibars. It actually might be up to 50. No, it's not up to 50. On the National Hurricane Center website, it does say 45 miles per hour. Which 45 knots would be 50 miles per hour, but yeah, that's inaccurate, at least from what the National Hurricane Center says. What's the water temperatures? They are 30 to 31 degrees Celsius, which is approximately 93, I believe. That's actually not, never mind. 86 to 90, that's the range. I think I put water temperatures on here. The buoys will show you the water temperature too. So 87 up here. 87 as well. Again, all these buoys are on Radar Omega, all the data here. 80, almost 88 up near the coast here. So they're kind of in the upper 80s right now. So not 90 to 93. They're more in the upper 80s. There was a temperature at the surface down near the Florida Keys that was like 100 degrees earlier summer, but I don't think that has been confirmed as an observation at this point because it's so high. It's a surface water temperature, so yeah. I don't know where that is in Georgia, fun times, but the greatest impacts for Georgia will be basically anywhere in this area here. Kind of outline it a little bit, but there you go. This is the main area that you have to watch for impacts. Flooding rains will be a big concern inland. There will be a threat for some tropical storm force winds, but that overall will not be probably the biggest concern inland. Right along the coastline, storm surge is a big concern. That is literally going to be there the night of the supermoon, which means, again, tides will be about 1 to 2 hours later than, or sorry, 1 to 2 feet higher, excuse me, than they usually are. I will probably still be live for the 11 p.m. update. If there's still questions, people are still watching, I'll still be live until, I'll be alive till 11. As long as there is interest in that. So yeah, I'll be live till 11, I think. Probably have enough questions. By the way, quick look at Franklin. Franklin is we're starting to see an eye on Franklin. This is the infrared imagery. There is an eye beginning to form. You can kind of see it there in the middle. Well, it's been formed. I mean, it's been there for a while, but you can see it a little bit more clearly now. So it's beginning to intensify. Again, that's going to become a Category 3 hurricane by tomorrow. First major hurricane of the season. Over there. All right, there we go. Live stream tomorrow? I will probably have a live stream tomorrow night, but no guarantees. If I don't do one tomorrow night, I'll do one sometime Tuesday. And I could have even 2 live streams on Tuesday. I might want to do one like during the lunchtime hour, and then I might have another one during the evening hours. But we'll see. I don't think, I really honestly, I think this pathing will be somewhere in here. That's where I think the landfall will be. So north of Tampa, and basically between Tampa and, I'm trying to see if there's any other towns. Perry. There's really nothing along here on the coast. It's very rural areas here near Horseshoe Bay, or Horseshoe Beach, excuse me. But I do think this will make landfall somewhere near Cedar Key. That's my personal opinion. And I've already said this, but I do think this becomes a Category 3 hurricane. Again, that's my gut feeling that this will become a Category 3. The National Hurricane Center has this peaked at a Category 2 of 100 miles per hour, which is in the middle spectrum of a Category 2. That's really the lowest wind speed, maximum wind speed that we can have for a Category 2 technically. But a Category 2 is anywhere from 96 to 110 mile per hour sustained winds. I do think this gets to a very strong Category 2 or a low-end Category 3 hurricane, and when we're already seeing this really rapid intensification, or not rapid intensification, sorry, but intensification at least over the last few hours with all the convection in the Northern Caribbean Sea, this is very concerning because this will start to really intensify the system and likely become more organized as we go into tomorrow morning. So that's obviously a concern there. But yeah, that's a huge area that's developing. What's growing over there in Texas? There's actually been a lot of rain in Texas today. This is the live radar feed. There's tons of showers and storms in this area. As far as there's no flash flood warnings, it's been raining for hours over near Palestine, but they need rain. It's been raining there all day long. It's actually down near Houston now. Lots of rain. Temperatures as low as 72 in Athens, Texas. That's pretty cold. My room is not even set at 72 degrees. That's kind of crazy. They've been above like 100 degrees every day for the last several months. It's been brutal over there. So they need a break. I think everybody needs a break from this heat, to be honest. I think everybody's dealing with the heat. Who's at least experienced a day that we've either had a heat indice above 100 or the temperature being above 100? Just say yes in the chat if you've experienced that. If you haven't, say no. I'd be surprised if you haven't. If you're over in Idaho, it might be different. Florida, I mean, heat indice values have been over 100, so. There's a lot of yeses. I've not seen a no yet, so guess everybody's basically seen it this summer. This summer's been pretty brutal, though. This is one of the hottest summers on record, I'm pretty sure. No, it's been rather cool in Michigan. That's actually surprising. Michigan might have not been up there yet in terms of the 100-degree heat index values. You might have been. I have no clue. I don't think it's been that high there, so I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, it's still high. It's been at least in the 90s, I know that, but I'm not sure about 100. Remember what pushed Ian south of Tampa into Fort Myers last year? Maybe high pressure was involved. I'll be honest, I really do not remember. I would have to go back and look, because it feels like Ian just happened yesterday, to be honest. Like, I did not chase Ian, I chased Hurricane Nicole, which came right after that, but I'm guessing it was a high pressure system that was out in the Atlantic Ocean that steered it that way and started dropping south by the track. Because the track of it, I'll do a little line here. Let me take off the satellite again. But this was basically the pathing. It was legitimately this. Just gonna kind of sketch it like that. So I'm guessing a high pressure system might have gone from here back down here or something like that. I don't 100% know though, and I would have to go back and look. But that's my guess. That's probably what happened. But it feels like yesterday, but for some reason I don't really remember that. I did about 6, or it might have been more than 6 live streams. I did a bunch of live streams on that event. I'm pretty sure I did 11 total. I looked it up today. I'm pretty sure I did 11 total on that Hurricane Ian, which is just crazy. 11 live streams for one hurricane. I'm pretty sure I've had over 300 live streams total now on this channel, which is pretty crazy too. Storm surge is typically the biggest threat, especially for the coastline. So yeah, storm surge is definitely a big concern. And let's go show you the storm surge map here. This is the current forecasted storm surge. That's not. This is. So again, the highest storm surge likely to stay north of Tampa, but again, subject to change, 7 to 11 feet of storm surge. That is adding in, by the way, the supermoon effect. So that's plus 1 to 2 feet of storm surge for any areas because of the tides being higher. So just keep that in mind, but I'm pretty sure that's factored into these. Down near the Keys, 1 to 2 feet. There could still be some storm surge right along the Florida Keys, back in parts of the East Cape Sable area, 1 to 3 feet. From the Chocolosky area, back through Charlotte Harbor, which is near Cape Coral, back through Tampa Bay, 2 to 4 to maybe 3 to 5 feet. Again, Tampa Bay could be very well higher. Any of these areas, again, could be higher or lower. It just depends on where this system actually ends up going. And this also, by the way, should update at 11 p.m. Just want to throw that out there. This is the 4 p.m. update, Central Time. This will update in an hour. So, again, I will be live for the 11 p.m. update for sure, because this will update too. We'll see if there's any changes. But 7 to 11 feet up there, again, it could change a little bit. And then back over in the Panhandle, not nearly as concerning. It's still concerning if you're right along the coastline here. But the thing is, again, low pressure systems, or hurricanes in particular, storm surge is going to be coming, the winds are going to be coming out of the southwest or potentially out of the south. And that'll basically steer these winds southwest to northeast, and as well as back up south to north. And that is going to push all that water. And that's why storm surge is higher naturally on the eastern side of a hurricane. And so once this makes landfall, let's say it makes landfall here. That's a hurricane. I made a high pressure system. Let's just make sure. Let's put this back to a low pressure system. This will be moving inland though, and then this will be the wind speeds and the wind direction. And notice back up in the Panhandle, winds will be coming out of your north. So technically, the storm surge would not be nearly as bad back up in parts of the Florida Panhandle. But that's contingent again on this being to your east by quite a bit. But even near the low pressure system, even if the winds were going this direction, storm surge can definitely still be high along that immediate coastline. So that's the current look, though, at the storm surge. Thank you, Augustus, for the $5 super chat. I have a Tempest weather station I'm ready for in St. Louis, Missouri. I recorded a heat index of 123 on Sunday. I wouldn't actually be shocked by that. The heat index values have been near 120, if not a little bit above that. So it's definitely possible. Any members only bloopers coming soon? I'll probably have one at some point. I just haven't had time. I was going to make one this summer. I've just been so busy. I'll be live at least until 11:15, 11:30 Eastern time. So I'll be live for at least another hour. Again, I want to stay live for that update at 11. AccuWeather has a different track. Do they actually? Do they make their own tracks now? I have the AccuWeather app, I'm pretty sure. Maybe I don't. I don't know. Yeah, I do have the AccuWeather app. Let me look. Because I know they do a lot of things on their own. Like, they make a lot of their own things. So let me check this out real quick. Idalia. This looks the same. Let me zoom in here. Unless it's something on their social media. But I'm looking at their weather app, and it's the same exact thing as the, maybe it isn't the same thing. It actually is slightly further to the south. Never mind. Yeah, so I guess AccuWeather makes their own forecast for that. They do have it, like, slightly further to the south. It's not much. But, like, the difference is, like, it's this. This is, like, where the line ends. It's down here or something like that. And it goes right, it's just east of Appalachia up here. So it's just to the east of there. So it's a very small, like, 20-mile difference. But, I mean, I used to make my own tropics forecast back in the day. I made a ton of them. And, I mean, I'd always make the track and all that sort of stuff, but I started doing the National Hurricane Centers because it's just more straightforward. I'd rather use the National Hurricane Center's cone and the track and intensity, all that, instead of confusing people, because it just gets confusing. I used to do that a lot, though, back in 2020. Has a wider cone? Does it actually? I didn't even look at that. Go look. AccuWeather's, they make a lot of their own graphics, so I would be surprised. Oh my god. Their track goes all the way into the central Atlantic Ocean. So they basically went ahead and made this thing go super far out, like out to here. They're forecasting like 7 to 10 days out. That's wild. That's pretty crazy. I mean, I think it would be useful if it was like maybe going toward the United States. That's just going out to sea, so it's really kind of pointless. But I've never used AccuWeather for hurricanes and stuff, so I usually don't use them to begin with. I use Radar Omega, and that's pretty much about it. I'll occasionally use the Apple Weather app if I actually need to, but even then, I usually don't use that. It's usually not accurate. I'll use computer models and stuff like that. Let me find this real quick. By the way, again, if you have any questions, feel free to leave those in the chat. Again, if you're just tuning in for the first time, make sure to subscribe down below, like the stream. We are 10 subscribers from 68,200. We'll keep you posted again with the tropics. We're going to be live most likely for the next few days, keeping you posted with the latest on this ever-growing tropical storm, Idalia. It'll become a hurricane, potentially a major hurricane as it gets closer to Florida. Again, Category 3 hurricane is where I've had it capped off at for the last 24 hours. I don't think it gets past that. But again, that's still kind of contingent on that rapid intensification, which is possible. It's not set in stone that that'll definitely happen. So just kind of keep that in the back of your head again. It's by no means a guarantee it's going to happen, but it's definitely possible. So we're, staying with the possibilities at this point. I have not, Davis, no. Maybe I have. There's some weather app out there. I don't know what it's called, but there's a weather app that, like, has weird alerts and stuff. Like, they're not normal alerts. Like, they call them, like, not, like a severe thunderstorm warning, for example, might be called, like, I don't know, a dangerous storm warning or something like that. I don't know. I've heard of some app like that. Prediction next update on the winds, 55 miles per hour was the wind number that I had. That's my prediction. Again, with this rapid, or this intensification that we've seen over the last, like, 3 to 4 hours, I wouldn't be surprised at 55 miles per hour. The current forecast is 50 by that time. So we'll see. 65 miles per hour by tomorrow, just after lunchtime. I think it gets to 70. Again, I think it's going to be like plus 5 miles per hour on a lot of these. I think it gets to 80 miles per hour in the Southeast Gulf, and then by Tuesday afternoon after lunchtime, 85 miles per hour. I think it'll get to 95, and then I think it gets to about 115-ish by the morning on Wednesday. Which, again, that's my personal prediction. That's what I think will happen. I think it's going to be slightly higher on those values. So the wind speeds, again, a little bit different. This will probably not be a Category 4 or 5 hurricane. If this became a Category 4 or 5 hurricane, I'd be surprised. I don't think it will. Franklin, will, on the other hand, will probably become a Category 4 hurricane. But it could get to a Cat 3, which, again, a Category 3 hurricane is a major hurricane. Classified for major hurricanes is 3 to 5. So, Category 3, 4, or 5. We're not talking about Category 6 hurricanes, folks. Not a Category 6 hurricane. Apparently, there's supposed to be a Category 6 hurricane on September 6th. I don't see anything indicating that we'll see that. Again, if you get the reference, you might understand what I'm talking about. Yeah, Category 3 is very well possible. Yes, the moon is getting full. I've mentioned the correlation, but the moon itself, since it's going to be a full moon and a supermoon, that'll increase the tides by approximately 1 to 2 feet. It's not a huge difference you might think, but that's a big difference for storm surge. So, John, I do not smoke or vape. Random statement. Are you going to stay streaming for the 11 p.m. update? Yes, I've already said yes. I will be live until at least 11:15. Thank you, Cream, for the $1 super chat. So tired of being up for the 11 p.m. update. Stay up for the 2 p.m. update, or 2 a.m. update, excuse me, for the Storm Prediction Centers, when there's a enhanced risk the next day. I do that all the time. It is super exciting. During, once we go into daylight savings, or whatever it's called, I think it's called daylight savings, it'll be back to 1 a.m., so a little bit better. The hurricane could have, yes, it's going to impact the Carolinas. To what degree, we'll see. We'll see. It's probably going to be flooding rains somewhere inland or along the coast. We'll see where that is. Again, we have a few days to figure that out, kind of refine the details. Storm surge possible along the immediate coastline. And then, yeah, that's pretty much the main stuff. Damaging winds also possible. It could be a Category 1 hurricane going up the coast, but we'll see. Incoming solar weather. Solar storms do not impact weather. Oh. Like, if you're talking about, like, one of those, I don't know what I can't remember what they categorize them as anymore, but, like, the solar storms that happen occasionally from solar flares and whatnot, those don't impact the weather. Thought the hurricanes went in alphabetical order. While Franklin developed before Idalia did. So, Idalia developed today. Franklin developed, I don't know how many days ago it was. It was forever ago. Way back down here. Whatever day that was. That was like almost a week ago, I feel like. Maybe not a week, but it was like 4 or 5 days ago. Thank you, Champion, for the $5 super chat. I appreciate that. Thank you. We actually have a reference to the Valparaiso honeybees earlier. Your super chat, hope all is well. Thank you. For whatever reason about the teddy bear. Remind me of honey. Thanks, Lee. Yeah, I know, but I mean, like, again, my main goal is to be a broadcast meteorologist, but the secondary, if this falls through for whatever reason, I'll be a sports commentator or something. Maybe I will not be on the radio. I can guarantee that. I do not want to be on the radio. I just don't feel like being on the radio. Personal preference. What shift do I think we'll see at 11 p.m.? I honestly don't think there will be a huge shift. I'm not going to overhype this because there's nothing to overhype. And again, these forecasts are very honest, but I don't think there's going to be a major shift here. If anything, this might change like by 25 miles at most, like in terms of a distance. Let's go and put the measuring tool here on Radar Omega, but this is like 25 miles right here. So there might be like a 25-mile difference in terms of the cone, maybe shrinking a smidge, maybe shifting slightly to the east, but otherwise I don't really expect this to be a huge shift to the east. We'll see. There will probably, I mean, I think the line where it is right now is probably fine. I don't think this will change. I really think the biggest thing with the 11 p.m. update will be, one, the storm surge forecast. That'll change probably a little bit. And as well as the wind speeds. Because those things have not been or the wind speeds have been updated, but the storm surge forecast, the rainfall totals, all that sort of stuff hasn't been updated in 6 hours, which over 6 hours, things can change. This system here, again, has changed substantially. It's gone under intensification late this afternoon into the evening hours. Again, notice all that blue. We're looking at the infrared imagery. The blue is showing those very cold cloud tops. It's indicating thunderstorms, and that is really intensifying very quickly here, just southeast of Cancun. And so that's a sign that we're starting to see some intensification. Key West will see some impacts. Again, this is the storm surge forecast. So storm surge is a concern. It's a low-end concern, I would say, but it's a 1 to 2 foot storm surge. That's definitely a concern if you're on the immediate coastline. Otherwise, maybe some tropical storm force winds, but I think that threat is going to be low. I think this stays well to your west. I think it, again, kind of stays in this area here in terms of where the eye goes. So I don't think you'll see a whole lot in the Key West area, other than, again, storm surge, which, again, 1 to 2 feet, definitely still to watch for. 7 to 11 feet up here. Again, the supermoon that we're going to see on Wednesday will increase the tides by 1 to 2 feet. That does mean the storm surge is naturally going to be a bit higher. So I do believe, again, this forecast is accounting for that, but I'm not 100% sure. I'm not saying the sun doesn't affect the weather. I'm saying that the solar storms do not affect the weather. Those are two completely different things. If we didn't have a sun, the temperature would be negative like 10,000 on this planet, I'm guessing, or something ridiculous. So, yeah, I mean, that's just, yeah. Yeah, solar storms are different. They send off flares and stuff, and they do impact, you know, us minorly, but it's nothing that crazy. That's why we see the auroras, especially during the winter. All right, let me go back over to here. I'm just going to check and see if we have any other graphics I can show you. By the way, this is the intensity guide over the last 12 hours. Just want to throw this out there. I showed you guys this earlier. I might be too zoomed in. Let's back out a little bit. There we go. But this is 12 hours ago. Again, things have changed a lot over the last 12 hours. Notice only one computer model even showed an indication that this would go to a Category 2 hurricane, at least the main computer models that go into this. Otherwise, there was a lot of Category 1s. A lot of them were in tropical storm level. Now, since then, we've had about 3, maybe about 4, looks like 4 computer models, maybe even 5, that are now in the Category 2 stage, the majority in the Category 1 stage, and only a handful that are in the category, or the tropical storm level. So, again, a lot of computer models are starting to hint that this will become more of a Category 2 hurricane, perhaps even a Category 3 upon landfall. Now, as of right now, you can see here, nothing is indicating Category 3, but it's definitely possible. Again, there have been computer models that have shown that, but a rapid intensification process could get that to a major hurricane. And here's the tracks right now, the spaghetti models. And I'll zoom in a little bit here. I'll zoom in as much as possible. These are the spaghetti models here. So again, notice most computer models are keeping it in between the Appalachia area back through Tampa. That's pretty much the range of where this will make landfall. That's where most of the computer models are having it sit. Yeah, this is going to be making landfall, believe it or not, in about 60 hours. It's not far from now. It's about 2 days that's going to be making landfall in. It's really close by. It feels a lot further than it might be because it's moving so slowly right now in the Northern Caribbean Sea, but it's going to move very quickly. 24 hours from now, It's going to be in the southeast Gulf of Mexico in about 48 hours. So Tuesday night, it's going to be just west of Florida, and it's going to really quickly move to the north and east. And by 3 days from now, it's already going to be in the Carolinas. 4 days from now, they'll be probably moving away from the United States. So, kind of throwing that out there for context in terms of what's going to be happening here. I'm going to put this graphic on the screen here for a second. I pulled this up earlier, but this is from the National Hurricane Center as well. Just kind of read this, take a screenshot real quick. It's really important to read this. I mentioned this throughout the forecast. But basically, the eye of the storm, or the forecast cone, I should say, the eye of the storm could go anywhere in that area, and impacts can be felt outside of it. And it also, the size of the storm, it will not be shown on the cone. So please make sure you're doing your due diligence when you're looking at these graphics and making sure you're aware that the cone of uncertainty is not necessarily where the impacts will be held to, because there will be impacts outside there. Again, storm surge is possible in the Key West area. Notice the cone is nowhere near Cape West or Key West. And then back over in the Florida Panhandle over here, I'm not expecting much there, to be honest, but there might be some minor storm surge there along the coastline. And notice there's storm surge warnings in effect outside of the cone of uncertainty. And again, this cone is in for a reason. This is where the eye could go. So it could go more further to the west, further to the south and east. So just keep that in mind. But there's a better chance that they will go right in the dead center. But again, with Ian, what we saw, it was much further to the south. Hey, Delphi for the $10 super chat. I appreciate your generosity. Thank you. The NEM 3K model is not that ridiculous, this model run. I'll check it out. Go and check out this computer model. I don't think it goes far enough out yet. It doesn't go far out enough yet. 18Z model run probably was crazy, is my guess. I mean, this is showing like a Category 5 type hurricane. A lot of these short-term Q models do this, which, again, Category 5 or 4 is not expected, but at least this gives you an idea of the outer bands, because that's really the only reason why I would even show this, is because the outer bands gives you an idea of where that tornado risk would be. So I'll just kind of play through this a little bit real quick. But the outer bands is where that tornado risk will be. So you'll notice a few of them going into Tuesday afternoon. This is 6 p.m. Let me go back a little bit. This goes way too quick. Let's go back to 2 p.m. So again, a few outer bands here around 2 p.m. This is 3 to 4 p.m. Again, tornado risk low, but it's definitely not zero on those outer bands on the west coast of Florida. Maybe even a few inland. And if we got any of these inland in central Florida near Kissimmee and Orlando, there could be a tornado risk out of that. Once we go closer to 5 to 6 o'clock, this will be moving up toward Daytona Beach, Interstate 95, Palm Coast, Palm Bay. By 7 to 8 o'clock, those storms will probably start to weaken, and then we'll have our next outer band. They'll start to produce another low-end tornado risk during the evening. Overnight, tornado risk does go down, but there will be a nocturnal threat, at least the low side of things. And then eventually going closer to the late overnight, we'll kind of see what happens, but then it'll make landfall. This is the last hour that it shows, which again, this is way overdoing it. I'm going to keep mentioning that. Again, this is like showing a Category 6, pretty much. Again, Category 6 is not a thing. I'm just giving you a reference to what happened a few weeks ago. This is like a Category 5, though, in all honesty, but we're not looking at that out of this system. Maximum, I think this gets to, again, as a Category 3 hurricane upon landfall. And let's go to the GFS model. So this is a GFS model kind of showing similar things in terms of the circularization. Again, it's not going to show us the best resolution, but this is like the eye right here, which will be a little bit more defined at this point. And it'll probably become a strong Category 2, if not a low-end Category 3 hurricane. So again, this could be our second major hurricane of the year. We'll have to wait and see. That's my expectation, though. I think, again, this becomes a Category 2, if not a potential Category 3 hurricane. Do I think we'll see snow this fall? I'm not doing a winter forecast today, and I probably will not do the one this week at all. I might do a winter forecast, though, in a few weeks, if you guys are really desperate for some winter hype. That's pretty much what it is. Again, winter forecasts are just kind of get you excited more than anything. They don't really have any, there's not a whole lot of scientific approach behind it, other than talking about the El Nino and La Nina effects. Those can definitely be helpful, but those are usually not, they're not going to give you specific details on every place and how much snow you'll actually see. It just doesn't do that. It just gives you an idea of how much, if you'll be above average, below average precipitation, all that sort of stuff. That's about it. But they're hype forecasts. If you ever see one on YouTube, there's a bunch of them nowadays. They're out all the time, even as early as August. I think August is ridiculous, to be honest with you, For winter forecasts, I think September, maybe October is a bit more reasonable. I'll probably have one in October. That's my guess. Maybe November, but it's way too early to do a winter forecast. There's so many things that can change, but I mean, El Nino is likely, so It's very likely. We'll see. No, this is not going to join forces, these two hurricanes. I know it might look like it, but these are not going to just all of a sudden join forces. This will stay well to the east. I know it looks like it's coming close, but there will be some tropical showers, perhaps, in the Bahamas over the next few hours. But these two things are so far apart. I mean, if you look at, like, even the outer bands, how far apart they are right now, this is pretty much the outer bands right here. That's literally where they are. That's not even this other convection. They're still over 600 miles away. They're nowhere near each other. So there's no joint force that's going to happen with these two things. And plus, Franklin's going to start speeding up as a Category 4 and go out to sea. So. A further reminder, if you're just tuning in again for the first time, make sure to subscribe to the channel. That red button down below. Again, we'll keep you posted ahead of time with the latest on hurricane season, as well as obviously Tropical Storm Idalia, that is again possibly going to become our second major hurricane of the year. Again, we haven't had our first yet, but Franklin will probably be ahead of schedule on that. And also make sure to hit the like button down below. This helps get out to more people. Again, today's stream is brought to you by Radar Omega. That's what we've been using on this entire live stream. You can check out Radar Omega with the top link in the description below. Let's get some hearts in the chat as well for Radar Omega. I do appreciate them sponsoring today's live stream. It does help to upgrade our setup, being able to do these live streams as often and as frequent as we do. I do appreciate them a lot. I just saw a flag go by. All right. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to leave those in the chat. Again, I'm basically answering questions for the next 35 minutes. We'll go over, obviously, things otherwise that are happening. But a lot of this is answering questions right now until the 11 p.m. update. That's what we're waiting for. The 11 p.m. update is the bigger of the two updates. At 11 p.m., we'll have more of an idea of if there's any bigger changes to the overall cone of uncertainty. Will it, change direction, that sort of thing. And there will be an update to the storm surge forecast, the rainfall totals, all that sort of stuff, all coming up at 11 p.m. Eastern time. So that's in, again, about 35 minutes. That's what we're basically here for right now. Otherwise, I would have ended the live stream like an hour ago. But we'll be waiting on that, which is in about half an hour from now. Looks like the eye is forming right now. It's not really forming right now. Again, there's a big burst of convection here over the last few hours. We'll see that a little bit better here. But not really any eye yet. I'm not seeing a whole lot of any circularization here. Not really seeing anything too crazy yet. I don't think it's really coming together that much yet, but again, it probably will over the next 12 to 24 hours. Can we look at a sounding? What do we need to look at a sounding for? Probably could look at a sounding of what's going on in the hurricane, but there's a Cat 4 hurricane. How much damage can it do in a radius? If you're just talking about wind speeds and not storm surge, within a 50-mile radius, usually you're at least going to see hurricane force winds. So it can cause definitely some damage, but depends how close you are to that 50-mile radius. The further away you get, the less the damage will be in terms of wind speeds. But again, storm surge is a big thing. Flooding rains can also be a big thing. But again, I don't foresee a Category 4 hurricane out of this. But Franklin right now is a good example of what the tropical storm that's right now in the Northern Caribbean Sea will be. This is what it looks like right here, Idalia. This will be probably pretty similar in terms of what it looks like. But Idalia could very well be a bit bigger than that. So we'll wait and see. Because right now, this entire thing it's a little bit bigger, I think, than 200 miles. It's pretty big. Franklin's pretty big right now. The outer bands go out forever. But it's at least about 200-300 miles wide in terms of its radius. I think it's going to be probably around the same size for Idalia. If you're right along the southern or South Carolina coast, we're primarily looking, again, there's so much uncertainty here long term, so things could change. There's three scenarios. One of which would be scenario one, it goes out to sea, takes a very easterly path and a very southerly path. This would be well out to the east, away from South Carolina, and it would probably pose minor impacts. Maybe moderate impacts right along the coastline for some storm surge, heavy rainfall. If it takes the middle path, which is a higher probability, this would pose a higher wind threat to the coastline, storm surge would be increased, and flooding rains would be really prominent across this area. We could see upwards of 6 to 10 inches of rain in those areas, so it's definitely a concern there. Our third scenario, which again, these are the three main scenarios. There are other scenarios, but those are going to be kind of in between the three here. Third scenario, it stays well inland. This would cause more of a flooding rain concern with a tornado risk on the eastern side of this thing. So basically, eastern South Carolina, eastern North Carolina. That would be, though, again, if it stays that far to the west, which I don't think it will. But, again, scenario 2 is the most likely one. Scenario 1 here, so I'll just label these, but scenario 1, this one's a very low chance. This is 2, and this is 3. Scenario 2 has the highest probability, in my opinion. Probably good, like, again, if we're talking about, like, within reason here, it's probably a good 60% chance of happening. This is about a 25% chance of happening, and this is, like, 15%. I don't even know why I'm putting this 15%, because I don't think this will happen, but personally, we could probably bump this to 65, downgrade that to 10. But that's a scenario. So again, really worst case scenario would be 2. That would pose more of a storm surge threat, heavier rainfall inland and as well as on the coast, and storm surge. But even 3 is equally as bad for some areas. Heavy rainfall and all that, it could definitely be very concerning. For flooding, and as well as the threat for some tropical storm force winds might still be ongoing. Wind would be a lower concern by that point, but also a tornado risk. So we should see more info on the Hurricane Hunters at 11. We should. I can check. They have mission 3 right now ongoing, which is in progress. So they are currently going into Idalia, I believe. I think if this is updated correctly, I believe they are. I gotta kind of make sure here, though. Yeah, Idalia, right now, the Idalia one's in progress. So they are currently hurricane hunting. So that convection, though, again, I've been mentioning this a ton. Convection's blowing up. Again, that's going to intensify this thing. More likely than not, at least. I mean, there's a chance it's not really doing anything. It's just thunderstorm development. But when you see something like this right around the eye, that's usually not a good sign. That usually means it's intensifying. Yeah, meteorology degree, you probably could go on one of those hurricane hunter flights. I don't know if you want to. There's probably a lot of turbulence on those, but it's possible for the storm to slow down as it enters the Gulf of Mexico. Not with the setup that we have. The jet stream is going to become stronger, which the jet stream's not really a huge impact to this, but it will start to kind of steer it. But this is the jet stream by Wednesday or Thursday. It'll help to kind of gain speed on this thing, and it shouldn't slow down anymore. It really, if anything, it's going to continue to speed up. So I think this starts to speed up, though. It goes toward Florida. Again, the Cape Key, I believe it is. What was it called? Cedar Key. Cedar Key would probably be the area that would make landfall in, somewhere in that range, within about 50 miles. But again, it could go a little bit further south, could go a bit further north. My personal opinion is it makes landfall right next to Cedar Key and poses, again, significant storm surge. Category 3 hurricane is what I think it'll become. Right now, again, I've kind of mentioned this already. Somebody just asked as well. Probability of this becoming a Category 3, in my opinion, is like 40 to 50%. That's my personal opinion. It becomes a Category 3 hurricane. But again, National Hurricane Center, we'll see what their next forecast is, because they might actually say, I wouldn't be surprised if they upgrade this to like 105, 110 miles per hour near landfall. But I think this gets to a Category 3. Again, that's my personal opinion. Upon landfall, and it intensifies slightly quicker than what the current forecast is. But as of right now, it's forecasted to get to a Category 2, upwards of 100 mile per hour sustained winds, and the difference really is not huge. The storm surge would be slightly higher with a Category 3. Wind speeds would be about 15 miles per hour higher than what's forecasted right now. Wind gusts would be about 20 miles per hour higher, so around 140 miles per hour right near that eye. So there's a difference there, but tornado versus hurricane, which do you like covering more? Severe weather, I usually like covering for the overall differing things that happen during severe weather. Hurricanes, they're not nearly as engaging for me because I'm repeating a lot of the same information, but I love interacting with the chat a lot more. So there's basically an upside to both, for me covering them personally. Again, if you're just tuning in, the next update from the National Hurricane Center is within 25 minutes. So stay tuned. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel, and we'll keep you posted. Again, next update from the National Hurricane Center is within 25 minutes. It could be sooner than that. So just keep that in mind. Again, we'll be live through that, and we'll see what the update is. Again, that could be a change in the intensity of what is ongoing right now with Idalia, and then obviously the forecasted track could change. The intensity that they're forecasting could change. Storm surge might change a little bit. I don't foresee a major change, but there will probably be at least some changes here, so we'll be still live for that. I know Vince Waelti's storm chasing this. I don't know where he is, though. Since I am in Florida, I actually offered him if he want to get lunch with me one day while he's down here. But we'll see. But I am actively in Florida. We'll see how this goes. Again, I'll be riding through the storm with a lot of you. And, yeah, I'll be good. Idalia and Franklin, they will not combine. I'll just say that. They're not going to combine. I know a lot of people have been asking that. I know they look really close together, and I mean, they're not that far off. They're like 600 miles away from each other, but these are not going to combine. No way, no how. Not going to happen. They will be close, though. I mean, like, the closest they'll get is this. I'll do a little mileage here, but the closest they'll actually get from eye to eye, we're talking about eye to eye here, is like this close, which is about 900 miles. So the eye of those will be about 900 miles apart once it reaches Florida, basically. And then this is right here, 1,000 miles right now, so about 1,050. One thing I want to point out, this is actually big. I did not realize this. This is a pretty big update from the European model, which is one that is very, very, very consistent and very accurate with tropical data. We have to show you this, though. This is actually a pretty important one. We did not look at this earlier. We looked at the 12Z model run. This is the 18Z model run. This is the most recent one. Look at this. Going into Tuesday. It actually shows it as a Category 1, if not maybe even maybe a Category 2 by Tuesday afternoon. Look at this. By the evening into the overnight, 966 millibars. That's concerning. Wind gusts, which are usually close to the wind speeds with the European model, 110 to 115. So again, this is kind of what I've been saying. This is probably what will probably end up happening with this system, is that it'll probably become a strong Category 2, if not a Category 3 upon landfall. And so, yeah, the European model is kind of verifying that now, up here at the top right. That's, again, a pretty big deal. I did not look at this model. I did not look at the most recent model. I swear, I actually didn't. I didn't notice this. I've only been looking at the 12Z and the 0Z since they go out further. I didn't realize this goes that far out. But yeah, this is the most recent model run for the European, which the European, again, is very, very, very consistent. It's usually very accurate. And so, that's a pretty big change to what was, again, there before. Again, I've been saying this all day. Category 3 hurricane is definitely in play. This is Category 3 level. We could look at a sounding here, too. I'm not sure if the sounding might go absolutely bonkers with this thing. I've never looked at a sounding inside a hurricane on here before. Can't even tell what the wind speeds are. They're all overlapping. Wind speed's 148 miles per hour, but that's wind speed. Let me see. Let's go to the 925 millibar winds. Yeah, you see here, 78 knots, 81 knots, 82 knots. What's 82 knots to miles per hour? That's about 90. So, again, I don't really... Whenever we look at the European model, I've done this for years. Usually when I look at the European model, we look at the wind gusts. And that's usually what the wind speeds are actually at. That's usually what the forecasted wind speeds are. So looking at this, 110 miles per hour. So that's pretty typical, in my opinion. That's how I've been forecasting with the European model. Usually I'll use the wind gusts and treat them as wind speeds, because they're usually a little bit undertaken when it comes to the wind speeds. And so looking at this, 110, 111 miles per hour, that very well, again, could be close to a Category 3. So, again, I've not looked at this yet. This is the first time I looked at it, and I did not notice this. So here's the winds near the surface as well. Highest wind speeds right on the immediate coastline. We can go right to Florida, too. Let's do that real quick. This is right in Florida. Again, this would be the highest wind speeds at the surface. But wind gusts, again, usually a little bit more accurate. So this is a bit of an estimate. At 8 a.m. on Wednesday, this is an estimate from the European model. European model is actually pushing this back now, so it's more in the morning hours on Wednesday instead of the overnight. And then this will be the afternoon. So, and wind gusts across the board between 40 to 55 miles per hour across much of Florida. And then it goes out to sea. So, let's look real quickly at South Carolina and Georgia, too. Now, this is right on the immediate coastline. Again, if it takes that track right up the coast, that's what we'd be looking at. The highest wind speeds, like Myrtle Beach, near 50 to 60. It'd probably go back, if this all verifies, it would probably be a Category 1 hurricane going up the coast. See that here? Heaviest rainfall being right on the coast. Again, that's the big thing. How far north or south will this be in Carolinas? Because it will make a big difference on where the heaviest rainfall falls. The European model indicating upwards of 6 to 10 inches right on the immediate coastline. Again, that's a track here. If it goes further inland, the heaviest rainfall will be up here with a tornado risk here. Your rain. And then if this other track down here verifies, I'll draw a new arrow. This will be where the heaviest rainfall falls. Tornado risk would be very low. So those are the differences. All right. Let me go back to do this. All right. Is the Weather Channel an accurate source for weather forecasts and updates? I personally don't recommend. I mean, I don't think it's a bad thing if you use the Weather Channel app for like a forecast, like a basic one. But whenever there's like a hurricane or something along those lines, you usually want to go ahead and look for videos online. Don't look for hype. There's a lot of hype forecasts on YouTube, guys. I'm being brutally honest. There's so many that are on YouTube that'll you know, just scare the crap out of you, one, or say something that's totally inaccurate, forecasting hurricane 20 days out or something like that. Those are hype forecasts. That's what we consider as hype forecasts, is when somebody's talking about a hurricane that's 20 days away from even potentially making landfall, which again, those never verify. I've never seen one actually verify. But look for, like, you know, the National Weather Service. They have forecasts sometimes. The National Hurricane Center has briefings too. Typically every day when there's a hurricane going toward the United States, or even a hurricane in general. News sources, your local news station is probably going to be on YouTube, so you can look that up as well. I do daily weather forecasts, but I'm not the best person for in-depth specific locations. I do overall broad forecasts. If there's a hurricane, we'll talk a lot about Florida, but I'm not going to give you a in-depth dive on what Port St. Lucie is happening, or what happened in Jacksonville, or what's happening in Orlando. I will not dive super deep into that usually. Severe weather is another one. I usually do more of a broad, like at least a regional view, or maybe state view, depending on the severe weather event, but usually the best for a very specific forecast is your local news. They have forecasts on YouTube. I mean, I at least from what I know, like almost every news station posts them on YouTube. Like if you're in North Texas, for example, I know WFA posts forecasts over there. They have already started flying in. Yeah, the Hurricane Hunter's already starting to fly into this. So they will be in the hurricane. Or not hurricane, sorry, in the tropical storm probably right now. I looked at tropical tidbits. They have it updating on there, so I'll look in a second. And here is going to be the flying trampoline meter, in case there's any doubt of where the level of this flying trampoline meter will be on Tuesday night and a Wednesday for parts of the West Coast. In case there's any doubt, this will be a gone forever stage. Again, that's the highest on our trampoline meter scale for flying trampolines. So there could very well be flying trampolines on top of power poles on Wednesday, as well as Tuesday night. So make sure you hatch down your trampolines. It's a low to medium risk for really all of Florida. So really anywhere in Florida, you should be hatching down your trampolines and all that. So will wind shear affect this storm? Wind shear will probably not really affect it much more. It already has. It has been for like the last 48 hours, but it's going to be kind of dwindling over the next 24 hours, so it's not going to be nearly as intense. Hurricane chasing is nuts. Hurricane chasing can be very dangerous. I was actually going to do that on Tuesday and Wednesday, but I'm not able to. I wonder what your trampoline scale is based on. It's actually something I made up. Nobody's ever made a flying trampoline meter, at least from what I know. Maybe somebody has, but I'm pretty sure I'm the first ever to do it. I'm probably the first ever that's crazy enough to do one. But I made it back in March of this year. Low risk, I mean, it depends on what we're talking about. If we're just talking about severe weather, a low risk is usually a marginal risk of severe weather. A slight risk is usually going to be a medium risk. An enhanced risk can be a high risk, but it's most of the time medium. And then in a moderate risk of damaging winds usually gets to a extreme risk, sometimes a high risk. It just depends on what the situation is. And then if we're ever on a extreme risk or high risk of severe weather, it'll be on the gone forever stage. Again, if you're just tuning in, the next National Hurricane Center update is in 15 minutes. But Idalia is looking way more healthy than it has for the last several days, I'll say now. The next National Hurricane Center forecast is out in the next 10 to 15 minutes. Again, I do think that we'll probably have a upgrade to the intensity of what this is right now, and perhaps a Category 3 label near Florida. But might be a bit far-fetched. They might only upgrade it to like 105, maybe 110 miles per hour. So we'll see. Also, by the way, make sure to follow me on Twitter, at MaxVelocityWX. I do a lot of stuff over on Twitter. I'll be posting some hurricane stuff on there. Or on Twitter, or X Social, whatever it's called. What model do you personally feel like is the most accurate? European model, in my opinion, is the most accurate for tropics and really overall general weather. And then HRR model, in my opinion, is the most accurate short-term computer model. Only 48 hours, but in my opinion, that's the most accurate. Ben, you only get 6 hours of sleep? Yeah, well, it's about 7 if you went to bed now. A friendly reminder, if you're just tuning in, make sure to subscribe down below. We are currently 2 subscribers from 68,300, so make sure you're subscribed. Again, we do live streams like this all the time. We'll have forecasts throughout the next couple days before Idalia makes landfall as a likely Category 2, maybe a Category 3 hurricane in Florida. And we'll keep you posted with the latest details of everything that you need to know on the YouTube channel. We'll have another live stream most likely tomorrow. And also make sure to like the stream. Let's get this out to more people. Click the bell icon down below as well while you subscribe, so that way you get notified with the latest videos and live streams for urgent situations. And this live stream also today is brought to you by Radar Omega. You can check out Radar Omega with the top link in the description below. Again, that is the top link in the description below. That's what we've been using throughout this entire live stream. You can get satellite data, radar, computer models, customize the radar as much as you want. You can get this on iOS and Android, believe it or not. So check it out, top link in the description below. There's cyclone port data, that's live cams. They have buoy data all over the place. All these little buoy icons that you see on the map, those are all buoys, so they have all that sort of stuff. They even take pictures. There's actually one inside right now of Tropical Storm Idalia, but it's nighttime, so we can't see. But we'll probably have a better view of that tomorrow. So make sure to check it out. Again, top link in the description below. TikTok saying a Category 6 hurricane. Yeah, again, we're not seeing a Category 6. Not even a thing. Hey, Christmas for the $9.99. Last week. In Louisiana. Are you talking about Louisiana? Louisiana did not see a hurricane last week. Unless that's another abbreviation that I've never heard of. Yeah, we have an EF6 Tornado King coming. That's a good one. Oh, LA. Oh. That's great. I actually, you know, funny enough, when Hillary made landfall, thank you, by the way, for the $9.99. I appreciate that. Thank you for your generosity. But back in last weekend, I was on vacation that weekend. Like I was gone from Thursday until Sunday. I got back Sunday. I was able to go live for Hillary for a couple hours, but yeah, that was the one that I had to rush to get like back to be able to go live, and I had to set up my studio and everything because it wasn't even set up at that time. And so yeah, that was a brutal one for me. I had to drive so far just to be able to go live for a couple hours for that event. But yeah, Hillary would pack the punch. I had no forecast on that at all. I only had that live stream. That was it, unfortunately. It was bad timing. I went away on that Thursday, came back on Sunday. Bad timing. I need coffee. I had a French vanilla coffee this morning. It was pretty good. I actually made a forecast today, and that was after I drank coffee. So I actually I talked faster. You might not notice it a whole lot, but I did talk faster and more frequent than I usually do. So I had to cut out a lot of different parts of that. I had to edit a ton on that video. Again, in about 10 minutes or less, the National Hurricane Center will have their next update on Tropical Storm Idalia. If there's any major changes, again, we'll keep you informed. We'll be live at least until 11:15-ish. So that's about another 30 minutes. But we are going to stay live for the Tropical Storm Idalia update, which is, again, within the next 15 minutes. It'll probably be sooner. Wind speeds, by the way, they are currently, again, in Idalia. Or no, they're not in Idalia yet. They're currently flying out, is from what I'm seeing. So this mission 3, this is their 3rd time they're flying in, is currently in progress. They are just flying out, so they actually probably will not have a whole lot of data from the plane itself, but they should have some data from other stuff. I mean, they have a buoy there too, so that might help. But see the wind speeds, by the way, 42 miles per hour. That's the buoy. Wind gusts of 55. So that's not far here from where the eye of this system is. It's a little bit further to the west and north, but again, I think it's at least 50 miles per hour now, but the plane's just flying out, so it'll be a little bit delayed. That Cancun radar? Do they have radars down here on Radar Omega? I don't think they do. No, they don't. I kind of wish they did. That'd be awesome. Although they have some in different areas. Maybe they have some, maybe, no, they don't have the MS down here, do they? No. But if they had a radar down here, that'd be seriously cool. But there's no eye wall forming yet, really. I don't think. It's more convection. Oh. Oh, here's another view, by the way. This is a better view of the infrared imagery. It's the clean infrared imagery. Better look at it. Again, that white representing your high cloud tops. So a bit better of a view. Here's Franklin. Franklin, more of an eye there, you can see. Franklin was just updated, I believe. So I think Idalia is probably being updated as well. Could be wrong. I think they're updating right now. Let me check. Alright, we have updates from the National Hurricane Center, so here's the stuff that you've probably been waiting for. Idalia, we don't have anything new on it yet. It's going to be out in a few minutes. Hurricane Franklin, Advisory 30. Franklin is strengthening. Swells likely to produce life-threatening surf and rip currents across the east coast of the United States early this week. So, again, that's pretty much a given with that system. We've been talking about that for the past several days in our videos. It's not going to directly impact the United States in terms of, like, land, but it will impact the immediate coastline with the life-threatening surf and rip currents. So that's from Franklin. It is strengthening, according to the National Hurricane Center, with wind speeds now at 105 miles per hour. So that is what we're at right now in terms of the wind speeds. Idalia has not updated yet, so again, we're still waiting on that. Pressure on Franklin is down to 962 millibars. I don't know what it was before, 970, so it's dropped by 8 millibars. Again, up to 105 mile per hour sustained winds. It is expected to become our first major hurricane sometime during the morning or afternoon tomorrow. It's moving north-northwest at 8 miles per hour, so again, it is beginning to turn. Really hugging that left side here of this cone of uncertainty, but regardless, that is the latest on Franklin. Again, we are still waiting on a Idalia update, but that's the Franklin update. In case you live in Bermuda or know anyone in Bermuda, or if you know any fish in the Atlantic Ocean, you might want to give them a call or text, make sure they are prepared for that system. Idalia update should be out within the next few minutes. Zoom in. Here's a zoomed in look. Yeah, you might want to alert any fish on this one too. If you know any fish just west of Georgetown, southeast of Cancun, call or text. Make sure they're ready. Yeah, Idalia, no updates yet. Should be out in a few minutes. Stay tuned. That's what we're waiting for. Yeah, the blue supermoon will be pretty important to this. Again, the supermoon will increase the tides by 1 to 2 feet, meaning storm surge will be about 1 to 2 feet higher than usual. Yeah, unfortunately, this is not going to be good for Florida. I've kind of said this already, but it's not going to be like, it probably won't be as bad by any means. It won't be as bad as Ian by any means. It probably won't be as bad as Michael either. I don't know what we really could kind of compare this to. Anything recent? I'm trying to think. I think we really can compare this to anything recent. Can't compare it to Harvey, by no means. You can't compare it to Ida. No way. Well, I'm thinking of all the major hurricanes that are like Category 4 or 5s, or Harvey, for example, had just dumped tons of rain in Texas. Thank you, Toasted Noodle, for the $5 super chat. I appreciate your generosity and thank you for your support. Again, you're just tuning in. We're waiting for the National Hurricane Center update, which will be coming out within the next few minutes. See if there's any major changes. Any cause for concern on a Category 3 hurricane, which again, there is still that cause for concern regardless of what they really say, to be honest. It really could easily become a Category 3 still, even if they still show Category 2. I mentioned this before, but again, Category 3 hurricane is definitely still in play for Florida. So, Category 4 and 5, very unlikely. It's not going to have enough time, in my opinion, but Category 3 is definitely possible. What's the European model say about this track? Let me show you real quick. We can actually go ahead and show you that. I do have that graphic up. I just looked at this a few minutes ago. This is the most recent computer model run from the European model. Let's go to... Here we go. So this is the computer model. Again, this is 2 a.m. on Wednesday. And then this is 5 a.m., 8 a.m. Again, notice how much stronger it's showing it. This is a big intensification from what we saw 6 hours ago on the 12Z model run. It shows it as a Category 3 potential hurricane making landfall just north of Tampa, west of Gainesville. By 11 a.m. it makes landfall north of Cedar Key, southeast of Tallahassee. So, again, still some things here that could change, but this would be obviously the concern. Again, this will be something to watch for. Is the only factor stopping this from becoming a Category 5 hurricane or 4 hurricane time? No. One or the other. I mean, time is one of the biggest things, but when we had Ian, these are very similar, right? These are very similar tracks in terms of Ian, and as well as that's a huge. Wait, we have a huge update. I'm gonna get to the huge update here in a second. This is a big update. This could, again, this is very easily could become a Category 3 hurricane with what I just heard in chat. But Ian was over here as a Category 3 before Cuba, and then it crashed as a Category 4 up here. This was much more intense at this time in comparison to what Idalia is. So there's some pretty big changes there. All right, huge National Hurricane Center update. It sounds like that is coming out. Possibly. I have not seen an official update yet, but somebody in the chat said 60 miles per hour, which would be way higher than I thought it would be at this time, but we're about to find out. But this is a very organized system now. It's become much more healthy over the last 12 hours. Cone shift? There might be a cone shift. We'll see. I'm going to pull up tabs to compare and contrast everything as well. That way we have, you know, some things to compare everything to, because I don't want to not have something to compare everything to. So we're going to do that. Just in case there's some big updates. We'll compare and contrast the forecast and kind of show you what the differences are. But again, we could have a pretty big National Hurricane Center update here in a second. Yeah, we could have a very, very big update. Category 3 hurricane is definitely possible. I've been saying it all day. But we're going to get the next update within the next few minutes. I've seen 60 mile per hour things in chat here, but I have not seen that confirmed yet. So I'm going to wait and see. But we're going to kind of go over what that means as well after that. So stay tuned. Yeah, if you're just tuning in, make sure to subscribe to the channel. We'll keep you posted again with the tropics. No hype forecasts. Very honest here. And we'll keep you posted with the latest. And Category 3 hurricane is not to hype this thing up. I'm not saying that. There's legitimate scientific reason that I have for to potentially become a Category 3 by the time it gets to Florida. So. Fully out now? Still don't see it. Yeah, I still don't see the advisory. Oh. Nope, now I do. Alright, this is the update. We do have the advisory out from the National Hurricane Center. Again, big updates to what this is right now. Really big update, actually, in terms of the wind speeds. I was predicting 50 to 55 by this time with how intense it's gotten over the last few hours. National Hurricane Center has jumped the gun and said 60 mile per hour winds are now sustained in here, which right now the forecast was that it would be 50 miles per hour overnight tonight. So this is, again, well ahead of schedule in terms of its intensity. Now, could it weaken down to that wind speed? Probably not at this point, but I mean, it could stay stationary in terms of its wind speed over the next 6 to 12 hours. It's possible, but this is intensifying very quickly. Notice by 2 o'clock tomorrow, this is Monday, this is on mesoscale, or whatever Monday, Meteorological Madness Monday, that's what I call it now. 65 mile per hour wind speeds at 2 p.m. That, again, could very well go up 10 miles per hour to a Category 1 hurricane. I don't think this has updated the track yet, so I'm still waiting on the track to update here. The wind speeds again at 60 miles per hour, that's current. This is at 992 millibars, which as of now, or as of 3 hours ago, was at 995. So it's starting to decrease in pressure. It's becoming more organized. Hurricane warning is now in effect for the Rio Cuba area. Hurricane watch is still in effect up and down the coast of Florida. Storm surge watch is also in effect. Tropical storm warning in effect for the Yucatan Peninsula and parts of the dry Tortugas, Florida. I'm not sure where that is. But that is a place that is also under this tropical storm warning now. as well as the Isle of Youth, Cuba. Again, we're still waiting for the track update, but my guess here, again, if this continues its intensity, which at 60 miles per hour, this is 15 miles per hour higher than it was 3 hours ago. That's a pretty big difference. The forecast was, again, 65 here. This will probably be 75, 70. That's what I think it'll become. Again, that's my personal opinion. Up here, it'll probably get upwards of 85. This will probably become around 100, 105 area. And then up here will probably be upwards of 115. I don't think it gets past 115 miles per hour for sustained winds, which again, 115 miles per hour is Category 3 level. So again, I'm pretty confident that this becomes a Category 2 strong or a weak Category 3 hurricane, which it's not really weak. It's just on the lower side of things. Seeing if there's any other updates on the cone here. All that sort of stuff. By the way, it is still moving east very, very slowly. Very, very slowly. I don't think it's really changed a whole lot in terms of speed. It's really moving slow. It's about to start to crank up to the north here pretty soon. I don't see the wind speed on here for some reason. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and start doing comparing and contrasting to the cone and all that, see if there's any differences there. I don't know if they've changed anything. The cone is not updated yet. It should update here momentarily. So we'll have that update. It has updated now. So we have the update on the cone of uncertainty, and I'm going to go ahead and compare and contrast again. Hold your horses. I'm going to go ahead and try to do this as best as I can. I usually don't do compares and contrasts to this level, so we're going to go and do this. So this is current track as of 7 p.m. This is their 10 p.m. track. Let me make sure it's centered on the screen here. Yeah, it's centered good enough. So here's the difference. So I'm going to kind of point out the differences here. Biggest difference for the East Coast is that this is going to be further to the south now, the cone of uncertainty. So really, they're thinking that it's not going to go toward Virginia in terms of its eye. Again, this is a 10 p.m. update. This is a 7 p.m. update. Look at that little difference there at the top. This is where the line is here. And now this is where it is. So again, basically central Virginia, or sorry, central North Carolina is not included in this. They've also updated it so the hurricane labels at 7 a.m. That's when the landfall will be, sometime around 7 a.m. Let me see what they're forecasting for wind here. The wind speeds. All right, this is a big update. 110 miles per hour is now forecasted right before landfall. So again, Category 3 hurricane does look more likely than not now in terms of its overall intensity on land. So again, I've been saying this all day, but Category 3 hurricane does seem at least possible here out of the system. Storm surge update. We're going to check that out. Storm surge, I don't know if it's changed a whole lot here. Probably hasn't changed much, but it might have. So we're going to look. 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, there we go. Storm surge update has changed a little bit. So here's the storm surge from the 4 p.m. update. Again, I'm kind of comparing and contrasting what the differences are here. This is the 4 p.m. update, so this is about 6 hours ago. And then here is your latest update. So a couple of differences to note. Tampa Bay is now up to 4 to 7 feet of storm surge. Things are subject to change here, so don't panic. But if you're in Tampa Bay, and if you're within like the evacuation zone here, 4 to 7 feet of storm surge, be prepared to evacuate, because this system will be going in this direction here. And the storm surge is usually the highest right around the eye, and as well as on the just kind of the right of the tropical storm or hurricane. In this case, it's going to be a hurricane. And the strongest winds will be coming out of the south and west, which is very favorable for stronger winds and as well as higher storm surge. 6 to 9 feet now between the Chassa, I don't know how to say that name, but the Chassa area back through the Anclote River. So in that area that is also upgraded, it was 5 to 8 feet before, it is now up to 6 to 9 feet. This has not changed at all. So anything in here has not changed at this point. It's the same thing. It could get upgraded down the road as confidence grows to potentially slightly higher storm surge. Down the coast, nothing's changed otherwise. So it's just Tampa Bay with the changes. Also a small change here. The Englewood to middle of Longboat Key area is also upgraded to 3 to 5 feet of storm surge. It was previously 2 to 4 feet of storm surge. So those are the differences on the storm surge for this system. And again, if you're just tuning in, Category 3 hurricane is now more likely than not from comparison before. So that's the latest update on that. We don't have any update on the rainfall totals. There should be an update at some point, but rainfall totals, again, on the immediate coastline. If we go back to here, the highest rainfall totals will likely be in this area here. We can actually go and show you the GFS model to give you an idea of that, so let's do that. In terms of the flooding rain potential, that's a big concern. I know a lot of you are concerned about the flooding threat. The flooding threat shouldn't be as bad as what Ian was by any means. It's a much quicker system that we're looking at out of Idalia. Let's go to the rainfall totals here. So this is the highest rainfall totals here. Let me take off this tropical path here. We're actually going to go back to the tropical path here in a second because it's updated on here. Notice the red here. This is where the highest rainfall totals would fall. Again, it's subject to change. It could go further east or west depending on where this eye goes, but the highest rainfall totals in here would indicate the potential for rainfall totals between 4 to 8 inches. That's all the way up here, the coastline. But again, subject to change. See what happens. Inland in Florida right now, between 1 to 2 inches, maybe some isolated 3 inches of rain are possible. Here's the track. We're going to go back to the track here on the current tropical storm. It's a stronger tropical storm than before if you're just tuning in. Again, Idalia right now is up to 60 mile per hour sustained winds. Pressure has dropped by 3 millibars to 992. It was at 995 before. It is currently forecasted now to become a Category 1 hurricane by tomorrow night at 8 p.m. That's the current forecast. I think it will happen much sooner than that, though. I think it will happen around lunchtime tomorrow, eventually strengthening into a strong Category 1 hurricane going into Tuesday morning. By the evening hours on Tuesday, it's up to a strong Category 2 hurricane, perhaps even a Category 3 there briefly. And then once it makes landfall, Category 2 hurricane, most likely upon landfall, but maybe near a Category 3 as it approaches the coast. And then eventually tropical storm around 65 miles per hour, and then out to sea as a 60 mile per hour tropical storm. So again, huge changes, obviously. I know it might not sound huge, but that's a pretty big change from before. Again, this is intensified much further than what we expected, at least personally. I thought it was going to get to around 50 to 55 miles per hour. It's now up to 60 mile per hour sustained winds. Again, pretty big difference from what we had before. And this is what it looks like right now. Again, it's undergone a really quick intensification. It's not rapid intensification by definition by any means, but it has intensified quite quickly. This was at 4 o'clock today. It was really disorganized. By 8 o'clock, this thing has become very healthy, very organized. And down the road, that's obviously very concerning for this as it continues to go toward Florida. But this thing's blown up very, very quickly. And all that white that you're seeing on the infrared imagery, that's representing cold cloud tops. That means a lot of thunderstorm activity. That's convection. And we're seeing a lot of that right now back down in northern parts of the Caribbean Sea. And again, at this point, it's more likely than not a Category 3 hurricane will unfortunately be impacting Florida. But a Category 2, probably the bare minimum, will be making landfall. So that's the latest update from the National Hurricane Center. Again, a pretty big update. What does this change in terms of the forecast? Well, again, higher wind speeds possible. Storm surge will be a bit higher as well. And rainfall totals right now, not really any change from that. So those are the biggest updates. Again, stay tuned with us on the tropics. Subscribe to the channel. Free to do. The red button down below. Subscribe. We'll keep you posted with the latest on the tropics. We're 12 subscribers from 68,400. Making sure to like the stream. And yeah, all right, I'll answer some more questions here for the next few minutes. So if you have any questions, leave them in the chat. We see a Category 3 hurricane. I think we will. Yeah, my gut has been saying this entire time. So, we will see. Have a good night, Ben. Appreciate you tuning in. Read the third paragraph of the forecast discussion. Idalia is currently sitting over very warm waters around about 30 degrees Celsius, which is again around 86 degrees Fahrenheit. And when it moves northward, it will be over even deeper warm waters in the loop current in 24 to 36 hours. Although the trough over the Gulf could impart some shear over the system, this is likely to be offset with that by some upper level defluence. Idalia is already strengthened more than anticipated, and the environment looks ripe for additional intensification, possibly rapid. National Hurricane Center forecast has been increased and lies at the upper bound of the guidance. New prediction now shows a 95 knot hurricane over the eastern Gulf in Mexico at 48 hours, but it could be stressed that additional strengthening to major hurricane strength is becoming increasingly likely. Before Idalia reaches the Gulf Coast of Florida, interest within the storm surge and hurricane watch will have to be monitored, all that. So yeah, again, I mean, that's pretty much what we've been saying. Obviously, the loop current is very interesting with how that evolves with hurricanes and stuff, but rapid intensification, guys, it's very possible. Category 3 hurricane is very possible. There's a lot of things that are very possible here, so we're going to have to watch it all very closely over the next few days. There's going to be a lot of stuff to talk about. I'll have a video probably tomorrow. I'll have a live stream most likely tomorrow as well. Video might not happen. We'll see. A live stream, though, is very likely if I don't have a video. So I'll have a live stream tomorrow, so make sure you subscribe to the channel. And click the bell icon so you are notified if and when I go live. And yeah, it's going to be obviously a very busy next couple of days. Again, this is not the same as Ian, but it will have impacts that are sort of like Ian. It will not be nearly as intense, though, in terms of the rainfall. Storm surge probably won't be nearly as high. but it'll be pretty similar in that regard still. And then the wind speeds will definitely still be up there, but not nearly as high as Ian. So those are really the biggest differences right now. But Category 3, again, is very likely at this point, and definitely concerning at this point. Category 4 is, in my opinion, still a bit of a stretch. But the next 24 hours, time will tell, really. So in the next 24 hours, there's a chance that this really kicks up there in terms of intensity. And could it get up there to a Category 4? Sure, but it's a lower chance, I would say, overall. I think Category 3 is way more realistic. I don't think it gets there unless, again, the rapid intensification happens way sooner than expected. Which so far, it's already intensified way quicker than expected. Honestly, even a day or two ago, I didn't think this would just be a Category 1 hurricane. Guys, this is a very, very similar track to a lot of major hurricanes, and one thing that we know for sure, the waters are super ripe and warm. And this is just, I mean, whenever we see a tropical system in the Caribbean Sea moving into the Gulf, it's always, I mean, it's almost always bad news. Wherever it goes, it's almost always going to have some sort of major impact. It hardly ever doesn't unless we're not in August or September. August and September are so primed for stuff like this, so it's not surprising to me by any means. If it got to a Category 4, that would be a bit surprising to me. Category 3, again, I think is more realistic. But even then, Category 4, Category 3, they are very similar still. Once it goes out to the Atlantic, right now they're forecasting a strong tropical storm, but a low-end Category 1 hurricane is possible. Similar storm surge to Ian. It's possible, maybe a couple feet less than what that was. At least a few feet less than what Ian was, but let me see if I can find the graphic that Ian was. They had forecast graphics on Ian forever ago. I gotta find the really most recent ones. Because there's I mean, this is Ian. They're not very far apart. This is Ian on 9-27, which I don't 100% know exactly when this was, like, in terms of what day it made landfall. Hurricane Ian landfall. I could have sworn it was the 28th. Be wrong. September 28th. So it was basically a day later. This is what they're forecasting for storm surge. So, I mean, what we're talking about with the difference between this and what's about to happen, they are very minimal differences. It's different places, obviously, but the difference is not very big. Let me find the forecast map here. This is the difference. It's very... Oop, that's not the right thing. But it's not really big. This is the difference. So, again, we are looking at different locations, right? But they're very minuscule differences in terms of the highest storm surge. So 7 to 11 feet. This was 8 to 12 feet. There was storm surge as high as 18 feet, though, with this, even though the forecast was a little bit under that. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Tampa Bay, 4 to 7 feet. It was forecast at 4 to 6 feet. They really didn't get anything. The storm surge was way worse down here than Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay didn't really see a whole lot of storm surge. But, yeah, again, there's a lot of things to pick out here, but Ian was way different. In terms of storm surge, in terms of location, but in terms of the overall intensity, it's a little bit different. It's definitely gonna be up there. So, unfortunately, I hate forecasting hurricanes. I'll tell you, I really do hate forecasting them, especially if they're impacting land. That's the I'm pretty good at it, but I'm just saying, like, in general, hurricanes are so detrimental. They're so much worse than, like, I don't know, a little tornado risk or something like that. Like, this is very devastating to a lot of people whenever we have a hurricane like this, so. Yeah, again, the supermoon's in play, too. The supermoon makes that even worse, so they're very similar. I doubt we see a Category 3 tomorrow. The earliest we would see a Category 3 would probably be Tuesday. Monday will be a development day. The cone of uncertainty did change a little bit. It is shifted slightly to the east. So it's slightly, like very slightly further to the east down near Tampa, like by maybe 10 miles. Appalachia is no longer included in this. It's basically south of Tallahassee. So it has moved more to the east. It's condensed a little bit. The exact eye of where this is going to go is now directly over Cedar Key. which, to be honest with you, is not that surprising. For a lot of premorals have this, so. Currently looking at, though, again, with Tropical Storm Idalia here across Gulf of Mexico. Obviously, right now is in the northern Caribbean Sea as of right now. That's going to do it for the stream today. I do appreciate everybody tuning in. Again, I'll have another live stream most likely tomorrow. I doubt I'll have a video, to be honest, so I'll probably have a live stream on this. So make sure you subscribe down below. Click the bell icon as well while you're down there so you're notified if and when I go live. And also make sure you like the stream if you had found this informative. And also, again, today's stream was brought to you by Radar Omega. That's why we've been using this entire live stream. So if you need a radar app on your phone and you desperately need one that's really high quality, has everything that you need, an all-in-one radar app with computer models, satellite imagery, radar, all that, check it out at the top link in the description below. On iOS and Android, you can get it on your phone. It's really fantastic. I cannot stress that enough. It's really the best radar app out there. It'll be fantastic here right ahead of hurricane approaching Florida. So make sure you stay tuned again with Max Velocity here on YouTube. Make sure you download Radar Omega with the top link in the description. If you did something as simple as liking the stream or subscribing today, I really do appreciate you. If you donated today, became a member, I really do appreciate you as well. Thank you so much for contributing to the page. Really does help out a lot. But yeah, I appreciate everybody tuning in. Have a great, safe rest of your night, guys. We'll see you guys all again soon. Again, live stream is likely for Monday, possible on Tuesday. We'll see when I go live then. Have a great, safe rest of your night. We'll see you guys all again soon. Stay safe, and we'll keep posted with the latest here on Max Velocity. Make sure to subscribe down below.